Sustainable Kingston and the City of Kingston acknowledge that we are on the traditional homeland of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat, and we thank these nations for their care and stewardship over this shared land.
It's hot? Yeah, it's hot. It's hot. Hi, everyone. Hello, how are you? How are you doing, Kingston? Yes. Good vibes. Good vibes. Welcome to the 8th annual Kingston Climate Change Symposium. 8 years of doing this. Thank you to all of you who came out. Some of you are skipping work, even though you love your work so much. Some of you are skipping school. All of you are pretending like it's not cold outside. You came out here anyway. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for all of you. Thank you for being here. My name is Ali Hassan. I got dressed up in a t-shirt and a jacket that don't fit me really well to be part of this, and I'm happy to be here. It's very exciting. This is, I think, the 4th or 5th year that I'm hosting. Very happy about this year. Our focus is youth-led climate change action. So what that means is we're bringing together passionate young leaders, environmental advocates, educators, and community members for engaging dialogue on climate solutions that are driven by youth. And speaking about youth, we have some folks up. How many rows does it go? It just goes the one. Okay, well, I have a few schools that I know about are here. Calvin Park, are you here, Calvin Park? Good energy. Good energy. You know, it wouldn't hurt some of you to have that type of energy. I'm just saying, just a encouraging comment. LaSalle, is LaSalle here? Good job, LaSalle. Tyendinaga? That's what real enthusiasm sounds like. I don't want to shame the other two, but that's good. That's good stuff. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not giving you lip service at all when I say that it is so important that young people are here and that they're engaged and that they're inspired to be part of this. So a big round of applause for everybody up here. I'm really glad they're here. Thank you to your teachers who brought you, and thank you for having that enthusiasm while you're here. Let me give you a little breakdown of what this afternoon is going to look like. For those of you who are able to stay for the afternoon, that's great. We hope you all can. If you can't and you'd like to know what we're doing, let me tell you what this day is going to be like. I'm going to introduce the show, give you some of the admin of how this afternoon is going to work. We are going to welcome, I think we're going to have an official land acknowledgement. I'm not sure. We're going to find out about that. We are going to welcome Lila Williamson here. Lila Williamson from Climate Strike Canada is here. Let's give her a nice round of applause. She's in the back. She'll hear that. She'll be very happy. We are going to, we'll have a Q&A presentation with Lila. We'll take a 15-minute break. We're going to do a couple of breaks. That's one of them. After that, we're going to have a fantastic arts panel for about an hour. That is going to be amazing from people in and around Kingston. We'll take another break. We'll have a little chat with Max Manga, who's from the Kingston Youth Climate Council. And then we will introduce Autumn Pelletier, Indigenous rights and water activist who stuck it to Justin Trudeau a long time ago. Give her a nice round of applause as well. And we'll have a Q&A with Autumn Pelletier as well. So let me tell you a little bit about this event that you are at right now. First thing, I want to thank our sponsors, including our event partner, the Rotary Clubs of Kingston and Gananoque. Let's give them a nice round of applause. If you are wondering how to get involved with people who are good people doing good things, Rotary is the way to go. I did a little work over the years with Rotary Club in Etobicoke, where I live, and I say work. I was a judge at Rib Fest. It's not really work. I considered it work. As a Muslim, I shouldn't have been eating that much pork, but they insisted, and I said, okay, I'll do a little bit of that. And a very, very big fan of Rotary, and we'll have somebody up here from Rotary in just a little while this afternoon to talk a little bit more about local Rotary over here. We also have our event supporters, Queen's University, St. Lawrence College, Greenscale, McDougall Insurance, and Toast and Jam. Let's give them all a nice round of applause. Thank you. I should let you know, in case you walked by it, there is a silent auction, Sustainable Kingston silent auction. It was in the lobby. So every time you take a break in those 15 minutes, take a look at the silent auction. We've got items that are pretty amazing from local sustainable businesses. If you can support them, that would be amazing. You may have also received a card for the Kingston Community Climate Action Fund, KCCAF. This year they're raising money to support Extend a Family's Kingston's Growability Hydroponic Greenhouse Project. More info is available at cityofkingston.ca, KCCAF, and I'll mention that one more time before we're done. By the way, if you hated somebody and you were like, I want to make their life difficult, this is the font that you would give them. I can't think of it's like 4-point font. You're going to see me really doing a lot of, I don't know who I've angered in the organization, but this font is really, truly something. Couple last things. Waste-free event. It's a waste-free event, so if you have waste, eat it. I don't know. Just don't take it with you. Don't throw it around. Positive space. Positive space. We welcome everybody, including people who eat their waste. They're invited as well. Everybody here. And this is my favorite thing. You can get a free ride home on public transit today by showing the bus driver your climate change symposium ticket. Don't eat your ticket. You will show that, and then so a big thanks to Kingston Transit for that. Let's give them a nice round of applause. That is all the thank yous that I have. I do want to mention that we are being live streamed, so people can watch this at home right now on YouTube. And a welcome to people on YouTube or watching at home. I think the camera's there. I don't know. It's somewhere. It's there's one there. That can't be it. It's around. Is it directly straight, Jeff? The camera, the YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, hello. Welcome. And if you want to ask questions, if you're sitting at home and you want to be engaged, you can definitely do that. There's a Q&A after each talk. And if you want to participate, you visit menti.com, menti.com. That's the code right there, 17435266. You enter that code, and you can enter questions. If you're watching at home, you can scan the QR code on the screen. And again, we'll share these instructions every time there's a Q&A. If we don't get to your questions, you can also send them to Sustainable Kingston and ask them directly. And if you are on YouTube, share your experience using the taggable Sustainable Kingston and City of Kingston tags. Okay, all right. That's the agenda. That's the thank yous. Again, I can't be happier to have you all here in person. We did this a few years on Zoom. This is better. This is excitement. I want to introduce Kathy Brandt now, who's the grandmother in residence for the Kingston Grand, on stage to offer a land acknowledgement. Hello, Grandma. Let's give her a nice round of applause. Thank you so much.
Nyawa, thank you. So sego sewa goi was gonna go aga Kathy Brandt Yungyux, wax karewa gay Kyunga Haga Kandage. And so I bring to you what the Haudenosaunee people call this protocol. It's called the Thanksgiving Address, and it's a protocol of renewal. It's kind of like starting fresh every day as we acknowledge everything in creation here on earth. And I just ask that you be mindful in this moment so we can all be present and be of one mind as we begin this. And I'd just like to remind you that these words are always important because they remind us as we give thanks to the people first, because we are the most vulnerable. Creation can get along just fine without us, but without creation, no, we would cease to exist. And therefore, it's our main responsibility to the natural world and Creator for its integral part in how we as humans support that whole web of creation. And we need to be humble. And today, we gather our hearts and minds together and we offer those greetings and thanks for the people, because we have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. And we are grateful that there's still so much love in the world. And now our minds are one. And when I say that phrase, you're welcome to say toe. So it's a Mohawk acknowledgement. It's like your big toe, but in Mohawk, it's an acknowledgement of what I have said. Or you can say, uh-huh. Either one is fine. And now we gather our hearts and minds together and we offer our greetings and thanks to all those things upon the earth, all the green and growing things, the medicines, the foods, plants and trees, those shrubs and grasses, and also the waters and the life within the waters, and our relatives, the animals, and also the insects. And now our minds are one. Yeah. And now we gather our hearts and minds together and offer our greetings and thanks to all those things in the sky, the birds that sing their beautiful songs, the winds that come from the four directions, our elder brother the sun, who's shining so wonderfully today, our grandmother the moon, and our grandfathers the thunderers, and the stars in the heavens. And now our minds are one. And now we gather our hearts and minds together and we offer our most choice greetings and thanks to Singwe Diso, creator of all things. And now our minds are one. And this is where I ask, if there's anything that I have forgotten, that you give such thanks in your own way, greetings and thanks in your own way. And now our minds are one. Now, and I want to end with these lovely words from the Indigenous author and botanist Robin Wall Kilmer. And this is her interpretation of our Thanksgiving address. And she says, our thanks need to be as rich as the gifts of the world that shower down upon us every day as we stand together, ever grateful in the rain of blessings that bring us to unity. I would love for you to ask yourself, what would you put on your blanket of gratitude? As remember that everything that's mentioned here are all of our relatives too. So I wish you skana, peace, nyawagoa, thank you. You are all my relatives. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy Brandt, our grandmother in residence. All right, before we get our afternoon started in earnest, I am going to say this. I don't know, how many of you are from Kingston locally by applause? Okay, most of you. Let me ask you guys, you're Kingstonians? Do you enjoy your city? Do you like your city? You're a fan of your city? Yeah, great. Love it. A little forced. Sound a bit rehearsed, but no. I'm glad you said that. They were like sort of lukewarm. They were like, where is this going? I ask you that because I'm not from Kingston, but I teach here. I'm an artist in residence at RMC, and I teach at Queen's. I've been coming here more and more over the last few years. And I also travel this country a fair amount. And comparing Kingston to other cities in this country, it really stands apart in a significant way. And I say that as a person who's in a lot of performing arts centers. And you come here and immediately, it's a different, downstairs, they're like a glass of water, a cup of tea. That doesn't seem like much, but if I'm in Alberta, they don't even know that water comes out of the taps. They just give you it's all water bottles. I have to specifically say, I'd rather not have a water bottle. And they're like, oh, so how will you drink water? I mean, I'm not even joking. It's like we're not really understanding are you going to bring your own water bottles? Like, no, I'm hoping you have a tap and glasses. Like in this venue, that compost, that's not happening in other places. So I'm glad you have and also, just from a cultural standpoint, Kingston, there's wonderful things going on here. From a culinary standpoint, you are hitting above your weights in a significant way. There's a lot of fantastic places to eat. So I'm a fan of this city, and I say that all to let you know that you're doing good things. For a guy who's traveled quite extensively across this country, great things are happening in the city. And on that note, I want to bring up Deputy Mayor Greg Ridge to start us off. Mayor, give him a nice round of applause.
Hello. Well, that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for that. My name is Greg Ridge, and as the Deputy Mayor for the City of Kingston, it is my great pleasure to honor and welcome you all to the 2025 Kingston Climate Change Symposium. Let's hear a round of applause, everybody. It's great. I want to start by offering a big thank you to the City of Kingston staff and to Sustainable Kingston for once again putting on this amazing event. I've been to 4 or 5 of these now, and it's always great to have great discussions, talk to people, ask questions. It's fantastic. But it's because of all this hard work that we have the opportunity to listen, and we have this remarkable lineup of speakers and panelists. And yet, like I said, that chance to engage with each other. So thank you. Our theme for this year's event is Rooted in Action, Empowering Youth to Build a Sustainable Future. This theme reflects our belief in the power of youth-driven initiatives and the crucial role young leaders like you, way up there in the balcony, play in addressing climate challenges, climate change. Youth are not just the leaders of tomorrow, you're already leading the charge today. Throughout the day, you'll be joined by passionate youth leaders, environmental advocates, educators, and community members, all coming together to share knowledge and engage in meaningful conversations on climate action. I remember one event I was invited to at Central Public School, where all the members of the grade 7 and grade 8 class built models of what they envisioned a sustainable Kingston to look like. And that involves redesigning, reuse of public space, increasing pedestrianization, increasing the ability for growing community gardens, and looking at our food sustainability. It was amazing. And when I saw the presentation, because it was in the district I represent, Kingstown, I made it a point to ask them to do it again and invited as many counselors and the mayor as possible. And many, many counselors did come and speak with the children. It was wonderful to see initiatives like that with hopes and what they want for the future here, but also abroad when it comes to sustainability and our climate challenges. One of the Council's strategic priorities is to lead environmental stewardship and action, which we cannot do alone. That's why it's so exciting to see everyone here today, because this symposium is not just about listening, it's about sparking action. It's about bringing people together to inspire new ideas, foster collaboration, and nurture the relationships that will drive us forward in our collective journey with regards to climate challenges and a more sustainable future. So I want to encourage everybody to participate, ask questions, listen, talk to people. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity, so thank you again. This is a fantastic event, and I hope that you all have a great time here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, we're going to start this event in earnest. I'm very excited to bring up our first speaker of the afternoon. She's an award-winning climate activist, community organizer, and advocate for youth engagement. She co-funded both Sustainability Teens, which is a Vancouver-based youth climate organization, and also Climate Strike Canada, which is a national network of youth climate groups. She helped organize the September 27th climate strike, which was the largest protest in Vancouver's history, and mobilized over 1 million people across the country. In 2022, she co-founded Youth Stop TMX, an organization aimed at mobilizing high school students across Metro Vancouver in opposition to the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. She's currently a national scholar at the U of T, studying economics and international relations, in the hopes, and I'm sure this will happen, to have a career in environmental law and public policy. Everybody, give her all your love, give her all your enthusiasm. Lila Williamson, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that incredible introduction, Ali. I'm so excited to be here today. Let's see if these slides work for me. Perfect. So yeah, as Ellie mentioned, my name's Lila. I'm a climate activist and also a student at the University of Toronto, so not too far away. And I'm super, super excited to be here today to chat to you all about youth climate activism, about how I got involved, my climate story, and how you can get involved as well. So let's jump right into it. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about myself. So my name's Lila, as I mentioned. I'm originally from Vancouver, British Columbia, which is that photo on the left, but currently go to school at the University of Toronto. And that photo in the middle is my friend and I doing the CN Tower Edge Walk for her birthday last year. It was very, very terrifying. And yeah, some things I love to do in my spare time are I love spending time outdoors, I love reading, running, and hanging out with friends and family. And today I'm super excited to chat to you about my climate story, how I got involved in climate activism, and I think a lot of that starts with me being from Vancouver. So for anyone who's been there or lived there, it's a super, super naturally beautiful place. You know, Vancouver's nestled in the mountains, and you have the ocean and lakes, and so there's just so much access to nature everywhere, and I think growing up in a place like that and having that access to nature really formed my view of the world in a meaningful way. And I also have family who live on Salt Spring Island, which is like this small island off the coast of Vancouver. And just like running around with my cousins in the forest there, I think really shaped my view of the world from a young age. And another thing that's really shaped me is my dad. He has always been a super passionate environmentalist and always brags that he was recycling and eating vegetarian in the 90s before it was cool. And when I was in elementary school, he joined an organization called Climate Reality, which was founded by Al Gore, who's the ex-vice president of the US. And he basically went to this climate reality training and then was responsible for giving presentations about climate change to different schools and community groups. And so when I was in grade 6, he came and gave a presentation to my class about climate change. And I kind of knew what global warming was, but like didn't have a super deep understanding of it. And that was the first time anyone had really explained to me what climate change was in any kind of detail. And I remember after that presentation just being absolutely terrified and not understanding at all how we could be in the midst of this crisis that really threatened all life on Earth, and yet no one really seemed to be doing anything and no one really seemed to care. And I just kind of sat in that for a while, and the more I learned about climate change, the more hopeless I became, and the more infuriated I became that we were just kind of letting our world burn and just watching it happen, and everyone was kind of going on and living their lives the way they'd always lived them. But I just felt so completely powerless to do anything. And I just remember thinking, you know, what can I, as a 12, 13-year-old girl in Burnaby, British Columbia, possibly do to stop this massive crisis that's operating on a global scale? But that all really changed for me when I was in grade 8 or 9, and I went to this climate event with my dad, and I met this girl who was a couple years older than me, and we got to chatting and found out that she was also super passionate about climate change and kind of wanted to take action, and we were just talking about the fact that like no one our age really seemed to be talking about this or really seemed to care. And we're so glad to have found each other. And then she sent me an email a couple months after that and was like, hey, have you heard of this girl called Greta Thunberg? She's doing these school strikes in Sweden, and this is really cool, and like, do you want to help me organize a climate strike in Vancouver? And I was like, yes, like this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. So I got involved in organizing one of the first climate strikes in Vancouver in January 2019. And it was in support of a motion to declare a climate emergency at Vancouver City Council. And that to me seemed really important at the time because I knew that we were in an emergency. I knew that we were facing an existential crisis, but no one else in the world was acting that way. And so having the city of Vancouver declare that we were in a state of emergency due to the climate crisis would have been really huge. So we organized a climate strike outside City Hall during the council meeting. You can see us pictured here. And then a bunch of us gave speeches to City Council as well about why we cared about this motion. And the motion passed unanimously. And that was such an incredible moment for me. Oh, thank you. Oh my God, yeah, thanks guys. It was pretty cool. I think that moment, I look back on that moment often for a couple of reasons. I think one, it was so awesome to know that like I could actually make a difference and my actions could actually have an impact, even though, just one city declaring climate emergency, like, it's kind of small, but Vancouver was one of the first, and now many, many cities around the world have declared climate emergencies, and that motion led to a lot of action happening in the city. But even then, just knowing that I could kind of create change at that level was awesome. And then the bigger part of it was just meeting and organizing with these other people my age who also cared about climate change and were also terrified for their future and also felt hopeless and powerless was really deeply empowering, and something that has kind of stuck with me going forward. So that group of students who organized the climate strike that day we wanted to form an organization called Sustainabiliteens, awesome name, and also this kind of national coalition called Climate Strike Canada, of different groups of students, high school students that were organizing strikes across the country. And so we kept organizing more and more climate strikes in Vancouver, and I think by like the end of the summer in 2019, our biggest strike was like 5,000 people or something. We were like, this is awesome, like we feel really, like this is amazing. And then that summer, we started organizing towards the September 2019 climate strikes that were happening in many places around the world. And I remember in the lead up to that strike, we kind of knew it was going to be bigger than anything we had done before. We were like, if we get 20,000 people, that would be incredible. Like that would be a dream come true, expectations surpassed, it would be amazing. And we ended up getting between 150 and 200,000 people is the estimate. So slightly more than we had envisioned. And it actually ended up being the largest protest in Vancouver's history up until that point, which was pretty cool. So we actually started the strike at Vancouver City Council, where it all began that January. And then it was a little bit chaotic. The march ended up just kind of like leaving without us because there were so many people, and then we congregated in this intersection downtown Vancouver, which you can see in this photo here. And I was the MC that day, and I remember just like standing on this stage in the middle of this intersection and just looking out, and there's people like as far as the eye can see in every direction. And on the one hand, it was terrifying because I was supposed to be speaking to all these people, but also I just remember thinking like, if all of these people, if these literally hundreds of thousands of people are willing to skip school and skip work and come out to this climate strike and protest for climate action, like we can absolutely turn this around. Like there is no way that we can't fix this. And just like the power we had as a movement in that moment was pretty amazing to experience. And I think it's something I reflect on often because, I'll talk about this in a bit, but because of the pandemic and various other reasons, I think the climate strike movement has lost a lot of momentum in recent years. And no one can ever take away the fact that 200,000 people in Vancouver and millions of people around the world came out to the streets that day and said, we want our governments to take bold action on climate, and we are going to skip school and skip work until that happens, and that will always be true, no matter what. And so, as I mentioned, COVID hit very soon after that strike happened. We had another climate strike in October that Greta Thunberg actually came to, which is pretty cool. And then COVID hit, the following March. And so we kept trying to do some organizing online, but it was pretty difficult. And then coming out of COVID, I was in grade 12, and there was a lot of energy in Burnaby, where I'm from, building around the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. And has anyone here heard of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion before? Okay, yeah, I see some people in here. I feel like it's a bit more of a West Coast thing, but definitely still a national issue. So the Trans Mountain Pipeline basically runs from the tar sands in Alberta all the way out to the coast of BC, and like through Burnaby, where I'm from, as I mentioned. And so there was this proposal like many years ago to twin the pipelines, to basically put another pipeline beside the existing one to increase the capacity. And there was a huge amount of protest around this, just one, because it would be super destructive to the natural environments that it would go through, and there are a lot of indigenous communities along the route in opposition. But also it's just kind of crazy to be building more fossil fuel infrastructure when we are literally in a climate emergency that is caused by fossil fuels and fossil fuel infrastructure. And so, yeah, there was a lot of momentum building around this, and so myself and a few other Burnaby students started this group called Youth Stop TMX, and we were really aiming to mobilize students specifically around stopping this Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. And one of the reasons why that was important is The expansion was going to be built literally right beside Burnaby Mountain Secondary School in Burnaby, and pose a pretty significant risk to the students there. So you can see the students literally walking to school beside the pipeline construction. And so did that organizing for a while. Unfortunately, we're not successful. The Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion was built and is currently operating. But for me, that was a really good experience in the power of local organizing, because I think the climate strike movement was really global in its scope, and kind of broad in its demands. And I think there's a huge amount of power in organizing around issues in your community and organizing locally. And that's why it's so awesome that you're all here today, because I think it's great that the Kingston community is coming together to chat about climate action. And so that was my grade 12 year, and then in the fall of 2022, I moved out east to Toronto to go to the University of Toronto. I'm now in my third year studying economics and international relations. And I got involved in a group there called Climate Justice U of T. And throughout high school, I'd been really involved, or really, hearing a lot about the university divestment movement and all the amazing work that was happening on that front. And super excited to get to university and get involved. And so in my first year, we did a lot of really awesome work with Climate Justice U of T. We run 3 main campaigns. So the first one is centered around divestment. And so in my first year, the U of T as a whole had already committed to divest from fossil fuels, but its 3 federated colleges hadn't. And so we were really pressuring this one college specifically to divest from fossil fuels. And so we held an 18-day occupation of one of the buildings in that college, and on the last day of that occupation, they did commit to divestment. And then the other 2 colleges followed suit soon after that. And that was, I think, just another example of the power of young people, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But I just think young people are so incredibly powerful. I think that was a great mix of that, and also that real, localized focusing on something that's, in your community and that you have power and influence over. And then the other campaign we were running that year was Banks Off Campus, so trying to get U of T to cut its ties with RBC, which is the largest, used to be the largest funder of fossil fuels in the world, now just in Canada, but still. And we have an RBC branch actually on our campus in our student commons, and so we held an occupation of that RBC branch and got our student union to commit to not renew RBC's lease when it expires next year. So RBC will be off of our campus as of, I believe it's 2026, which is also really exciting. And then the last campaign we're running is something really cool called Fossil-Free Research. And so the Fossil-Free Research campaign is kind of like a broader movement happening at a lot of schools. And really what it means is not accepting funding from the fossil fuel industry specifically for climate research, but just kind of research and academia in general. And so I don't have a photo of this, but last year we released a fossil-free research report outlining all of U of T's ties to the fossil fuel industry. And actually our School of the Environment just this year adopted a fossil-free research policy. So they are no longer going to be accepting money from the fossil fuel industry for any of their research. So yeah, I'm a big fan of university climate organizing, and it's been super, super awesome working with Climate Justice U of T. And I think university climate organizing and college climate organizing is really important because higher education institutions have such a big influence on the way we think and the knowledge that we have and the research that is produced, and having them say that cutting ties with the fossil fuel industry is just extremely powerful, I think. And then in terms of what I'm working on now, still involved with Climate Justice U of T, and we've now shifted our divestment campaign to focusing on divesting the university pension plan. And that's actually a joint pension plan with U of T, Guelph, Trent, and Queen's, funnily enough. So we're trying to get them to divest their endowment from fossil fuels. And then I've also started working for a really cool organization called Campus Climate Network. And we're basically a network of university climate organizing groups, mainly in the US, but some in Canada and internationally. And I'm working on bringing new groups into that network. And then in the future, as I mentioned, I'm in third year, so if all goes according to plan, I will be graduating next year and hopefully heading to law school. And I'm really interested in environmental law. So that's my story. That's some of the stuff that I've done over the past few years. And I think I've learned a huge amount. Like, when I think back to the person I was when I was in grade 8 and I was feeling so hopeless and powerless when it came to climate change, I've really learned a huge amount. And I want to talk about some of those key lessons now in the hopes that it'll be helpful to some of you. So I think my first major realization that I've had throughout the years has been that we need systemic change when it comes to the climate crisis. And I think for a long time, I really bought into the narrative that like individuals were responsible for climate change, and if only we all just recycled more and took more public transit, like things would be better. But what I came to learn is, while all those individual actions are important, that is exactly what the fossil fuel industry wants you to think about climate change. Like fossil fuel companies, thank you guys. Fossil fuel companies want us to think, and have very successfully made us believe, that we are responsible for the climate crisis, when really they have sacrificed our collective well-being and futures for their profit. And I think that's a really important thing to realize. And something I find really interesting is, has anyone here heard the term carbon footprint? I'm sure you've heard that at some point. Total BS. Basically, the term carbon footprint was coined by BP, which is literally, like, I think the world's second largest fossil fuel emitter. And it's all part of this fossil fuel industry narrative that focuses on individual action instead of collective action, which is much more powerful. But all that to say that, individual actions that we can take definitely still have an impact, like recycle, take public transit, do all of those things. But don't feel guilty about it. Like, the climate crisis is not our fault. And also, the most powerful thing that any of us can do is organize. And that's the second biggest thing that I've learned, is that the best thing that anyone can do when it comes to the climate crisis is to take action collectively and organize together. And the reason that's true is because the reality is that we're going to need a pretty grand scale societal shift away from dependency on fossil fuels and toward renewable energy. And we really need our governments to orchestrate that, but they are only going to orchestrate that if they think that it'll be popular with people, and that's what people actually want, because they want to stay in power. And so the best thing we can all do is organize ourselves and show every single level of government that we want to transition to renewable energies and we want to see bold action on climate change. And for me, I think that's the best thing that any of us can do. And then kind of related to that is, we need an intersectional perspective on the climate crisis. So for a long time, I really thought that climate change was kind of a siloed issue. And it was really just about reducing emissions. If we stop using fossil fuels and we reduce our emissions enough, like, we'll be fine. And something that I've come to realize is climate change is really one of the many symptoms of some pretty messed up systems that our society is built upon. And those systems have led to many of the other issues that we're facing today, whether that be racism or sexism or poverty or inequality. They all really have very similar roots. And so I think it's important to have that perspective and understand that climate change is a symptom of a broader issue, but also to understand that we need a climate transition, an approach to climate change that leaves no one behind. So I don't know if anyone's heard the concept of like a just transition, but that's really the idea that, like, we need to bring everyone along in our transition to renewable energy, and no one can be made worse off by a renewable future, because if so, no one's really going to be interested in that. And so we need to have an approach to climate change that takes equity and equality and like all these other systemic issues into account as well. And then the final thing I want to talk about is, we need young people in the climate movement. Young people are just so incredibly powerful. We've seen this really throughout history, but especially when it comes to climate change. Young people were, and high school students mainly, were responsible for mobilizing millions and millions of people around the world on September 27th. High school students organized the largest protest in Vancouver's history on that day, and about 1 million people took to the streets across Canada. And we've seen so many incredible youth climate activists come out of this movement, including Autumn, who's going to be talking to us later. And so I think it's just really important to realize that even though as a young person it's so easy to feel like you're powerless and like no one really cares what you have to say, the opposite is true. And like, young people hold an immense amount of power, and I think it's also especially important for young people to be involved in the fight for climate action, because this has become a bit of a cliche, but our future is on the line. It's really us and our generation that is going to bear the brunt of the climate crisis, despite having caused it the least. And so it's so important for us, especially to stand up and take action and fight for the future we deserve. So I want to close off with kind of some tangible next steps to do with all of this information. Because as I mentioned, I think collective action is the most powerful thing we can do when it comes to climate change, but how does that actually happen? I think the first thing that's really important is finding people to organize with. Everything really changed for me when I found other young people who also cared about climate change and wanted to organize with me. And I think seeing organizing as not just something we have to do, but something that can be fun and something we can do with our friends is really powerful. So I think finding someone in your life who you want to do this work with is an awesome place to start. And then there's kind of two things I would recommend. The first is just getting involved in a local climate organization. So whether that be something at your school, in your broader community, I'm going to talk about some awesome examples of climate organizations in Kingston that I found from my very brief Google search in a minute. But just like joining a local climate group, I think is a really amazing place to start. And I want to say, like, I know getting involved in climate activism and community organizing can be intimidating, and it was something I had zero experience with when I organized that first climate strike in 2019. And I actually remember we were trying to figure out who was going to give speeches to council that day, and I remember like being like, that's so terrifying. Like, I'm going to let someone else do that. I'm just going to stay in the background. And then there was a voice in my head that was like, Lila, you should just, like, you need to push your fears aside and just do this. And so I gave one of the speeches to council that day, and I think that's kind of the mindset you have to have, is just like not being afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and do something you're unfamiliar with, because for me that day really changed my life. So yeah, getting involved in a local climate organization. Or on the flip side, I'm also a huge believer in the power of political organizing and in really mobilizing behind climate champions and candidates who are going to be willing to push for bold climate policies if they're elected. And so I think something else that's really powerful is getting involved in your local riding association or municipal political party and fighting for candidates to be elected who will pass the bold climate policies that we need. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say is just voting. I think we need the voting age to be lower, but if you are a voting age, get out and vote. Vote for candidates that inspire you and that will push for bold climate action. And with that, last thing I wanted to say was mention a couple of cool organizations that are working on climate action in Kingston. I'm not from here, so I apologize. I'm sure there's many more that I've missed, but this is a brief overview. There's Queens Backing Action on the Climate Crisis. We work with them a lot at Climate Justice U of T. Is anyone from QBAC here? Woohoo! Love, awesome, yeah. QBAC doing some really awesome work at Queens on divestment. Then there's 350 Kingston, Kingston Youth for Climate Action, Kingston Climate Justice Coalition, and of course Sustainable Kingston, who partnered on this conference today. And I also want to mention Youth Climate Corps is a super cool national organization. And they're working on basically starting like a federal youth employment program that would give young people jobs doing climate work. So definitely check them out if you're looking for an organization to get involved in. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. I just want to say thank you all so much for coming out here today, for taking time out of your day to chat and think about climate change. And I really hope if you're not already involved in climate organizing, that you take that first step and get involved, because it was really the best thing that ever happened to me. So thank you so much.
I know you said that was it for you. It's not quite it for you. We have 10, 12 minutes for Q&A, which we would love to take your time with. You've got, you have anywhere to be, or you're okay to? Yeah.
I think I can do 10 minutes.
You can do 10 minutes.
For sure.
So this is what I mentioned earlier. If you have questions, menti.com is the way to do it. You can actually, from here, take a picture of this QR code and link to menti.com. That's the code up there, 1743 5266. We had a couple of questions that we'd already taken. And then also, when you go outside, there's a ballot box if you want to put questions in, but that's a little bit more of a chore for them to run back with the questions, and you're writing them. This might be easier. So any questions you have for Lila, you can submit them there, and then they'll come up on screen. We can start with the first two questions if you like. How do you balance school and activism?
This is such a fantastic question, and oftentimes I feel like I don't, but I definitely try. I think, yeah, I've really had to get pretty good at time management over the years, and I think it can be really hard to balance the two. But for me, climate activism is something that I love so much and that gives me so much joy and energy in a lot of ways. And I think that's what I said about like making organizing fun and doing it with people that you're friends with is really important, because then I think you'll get a lot back from it that'll give you energy for other areas of your life. But I think it's just also really important to take breaks when you need it, because burnout is a very, very real thing that I've definitely experienced. And so I think just really not being afraid to take a step back and like trust that the people you're organizing with will keep things going is really important, and just knowing when you need to fill your cup so that you can come back even better, be my main advice.
We have a little surprise for you. We have your marks from school right here. No. Imagine, and then they were all terrible marks. You haven't been doing a good job at all, Lila. I'm sure they're fantastic. Next question. What advice would you give to 10-year-old Lila? Yeah, I love that question. What was your mindset at that stage of your life? Did you already see, were you plotting things out a little bit for yourself?
Absolutely not.
No.
I think 10-year-old Lila was probably just like experiencing a huge amount of fear and anxiety when it comes to climate change, but just like I said in my presentation, felt really powerless. And I think if there's something I would say, it's that you do have power, like you can make a difference, and you should. And like getting involved in climate organizing will make you feel so much less climate anxiety and like make you feel so empowered, and like you're really making a difference. So yeah, I would just tell myself to get involved earlier, like join a climate organization earlier, get involved in political organizing earlier, because for me that was really when it all changed. And like I of course still experience a lot of climate anxiety, especially today, especially on January 20th, but I think being involved in community organizing is such an antidote to that.
It's funny, when you say especially January 20th, I don't know if you're talking about Blue Monday, Trump, I mean, there's just too many things going on.
All of the above, yeah.
All of the above. How do we counteract the current political trend against climate initiatives? That's a very interesting question, especially that verb counteract. It's pretty loaded.
This is a fantastic question, and honestly one that I'm not sure I have the answer to. I think it's been really discouraging to see this kind of rightward shift in politics that we're experiencing right now. But I think what I was talking about with intersectionality is really important. Like I think that a lot of the reason we're seeing this shift toward the right in politics at the moment is because people are struggling. And I think that if we really show people as the climate movement that transitioning to renewable energy and building a sustainable future will make them better off, I think that's much more compelling than just like making people scared of the impacts of climate change. And so I think just like trying to be as positive as we can and making people really believe that climate action is not only necessary but will actually make their lives better is kind of the best thing we can do, and just like keep bringing as many people into the movement as we can.
What's your favorite part? Somebody was like, okay, let's mix up the negativity or the possible gloom and doom. What is your favorite part about being involved with climate activism?
I have to say the people. I have met so many incredible, incredible people through climate organizing. I think climate activists are just some of the most amazing people out there, and I really learned so much from a lot of the people that I've organized with, and built so many meaningful relationships. And that kind of goes back to what I said about like finding people you want to organize with. I think makes all the difference. And it's not only like taking action on climate, it's also like getting access to this whole awesome worldwide community of climate organizers that are trying to make the world a better place. So yeah, I think definitely the people, for sure.
What do you hope to do? I mentioned where you're, what you're doing at U of T right now, if you heard your intro, and I said I'm sure it'll be quite successful, but what are your hopes in the world of environmental law?
That's a fantastic question. I don't know if I have a super specific answer to that. I think our legal system has a lot of power when it comes to climate change, and I think like changing the laws that we have around climate has the ability to have a really big impact. I'd love to work for like West Coast Environmental Law or Eco Justice or any of those other organizations that are doing some amazing work in this field. But yeah, I don't know if there's one thing specifically, just like anything and everything that I can, basically.
If the voting age was lower, what age would you recommend it to be at?
Yes, I am a big believer in lowering the voting age to 16. I think that if people can drive at 16, they should be able to vote. And I think that young people are so smart. Yeah, yeah. I think shout out to Vote 16. Young people are so smart and so knowledgeable about the world and so passionate about the issues that they care about. And I think that, like, I remember even before 16, but definitely at 16, being so frustrated that I was considered a member of society in so many other ways, but couldn't participate in this very fundamental way. And so I was like involved in doing, campaigning and everything way before I could vote. And I just think that's crazy. Like, I think that young people need to have a say in the direction of our society. And I think on a broader level, governments are making decisions that are going to impact our futures more than anyone. And I think that young people should really have a say in who the people are that are making those decisions.
That's so well said. And in that scenario of yours, what's happening with the drinking age? Is that getting lowered or staying the same? Trick question.
I would just say I think Quebec has it figured out.
Quebec has figured out. As a Montrealer, I could say yes and no. Did I need to be drinking at 14? I'm probably dumber because of it. I don't think I would have been. The sooner you vote, the sooner you drink, the less you're inclined to vote. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not sure if we keep it at 18, and that's good for everybody. Given the changing political landscape, how do you envision future youth climate action?
I'm really excited to see a shift toward like political organizing in the youth climate movement. I think this has happened a little bit, but I know not everyone feels this way, but I'm a big believer in the power of political organizing and in electing candidates who are going to be climate champions, and especially in youth getting more involved in politics generally. And so I'm really excited to see. I think there's a lot of energy in like the university post-secondary climate space right now around divestment and fossil-free research, which is really exciting. But I'm also just excited to see young people really mobilize each other to, underneath candidates they believe in, and for more young people to run for office also. Like, I think we just need a wave of young climate champions running for office, and other young climate champions supporting them.
Yeah. Do we have another? By the way, thank you for your engagement with with questions both at home on YouTube and here. It speaks to all of you, and it speaks to how engaging and compelling you are as a speaker too. So thank you for that. What keeps you motivated when there are setbacks? Yes, God knows that setbacks is part of the world you find yourself in, right?
Definitely, and I think the thing with climate activism is like, and any kind of activism really is, it can just be so hard to get up every day and keep going when sometimes you feel like you're achieving absolutely nothing. And I'm even experiencing that a little bit now. Like, I'm definitely feeling a lot of hopelessness right now when it comes to climate, and it's a hard time to be doing this work. But I think definitely like taking breaks is a big thing. I talked about this already, but just like when you're feeling that kind of hopelessness, sometimes it just helps to kind of step back and take some time for yourself and recharge your batteries, because I think that if you do feel recharged, like, you can kind of do this work in any landscape. But I think also, again, it really comes back to people. Like, I think if you're organizing with good people, like, you will really keep each other motivated and keep each other strong amidst setbacks. I think sometimes you just have to accept that, like, there are going to be failures, and that's going to be really hard, but then the successful moments are going to be so much better. And like, no matter what, you are making an impact. Like, even if Vancouver City Council didn't pass that climate emergency motion, like, we still did something by showing up there and giving those speeches to council and having the strike outside, and that really kicked off this climate strike movement in Vancouver. It wasn't as much about the motion as it was about that. So I think it's just knowing that, like, just showing up and organizing means you're going to have an impact regardless.
It was interesting that as you're talking about setbacks, there was like the beeping of a truck when it's reversing. I was like, is there a truck reversing into us? That'll be a setback. I don't know what that beeping was, but it was ominous. All right, we have a few minutes left. How do you keep your mental state in balance, connected to the setbacks you just spoke about, I guess, yeah.
True. Yeah. Great question. I am just a super big believer in the power of nature. I talked about this a bit at the beginning of my presentation, but I think I'm definitely a pretty like outdoorsy person being from Vancouver, and there's honestly nothing that recharges me more than like spending time outside. I love running, I love hiking, I love swimming outside, and so I just feel like spending time in nature has the really beautiful ability to recharge you and just kind of make you see the bigger picture, and I think is huge for my mental health, definitely. So yeah, I think just that really, spending time outside.
I think you have it figured out so well out west. When you go visit out, like I remember, I probably was about 19 or 20 and leaving Montreal and going out west, where like our pastime was eating poutine and smoking cigarettes, and then you can't find much of either in Vancouver, at least at the time. You know, I'm going back a few decades, but just friends who, when I knew them at McGill, were into the sort of the Montreal culture, but then we're going on the grouse grind. We're going to go play volleyball. We're going to go do this. And it just such a connection to nature, and I think we have a lot to learn in big cities on this side of the country. Anyway, yeah. How does it feel to have all these schools involved in climate action?
Oh, so awesome! Like, can you give like a round of applause if you're just a student here today? Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible, and that just gives me so much hope. And I think, you know, when I was in elementary school, early high school, it really felt to me like no one my age cared about climate change, no one really knew what it even was. And I think, like, again, if my 10-year-old self could be here right now, like, that would be just make my heart so warm and so full. So thank you all so much for being here, truly. It's awesome.
How hard is it to organize these protests?
Hard. Really, like, I think if you've been to protests before, until you've organized one, you don't really understand how much is going on in the background. Like, even for a small action, there's so many logistics that need to be figured out. And especially for a big one like the strike we did in September 2019, like, we were planning that for months and months and months, and still everything that could have gone wrong on the day went wrong. Like, and it was just so stressful. So definitely hard, but also extremely rewarding. Like, seeing all these people come out to an action that you've organized and stand up for something you believe in is probably the most rewarding feeling I've ever experienced. So it's absolutely worth it, but definitely challenging and stressful at the same time.
Okay, those are our questions. Leila, thank you so much. Another round of applause.
Thank you so
Lila
much.
Williamson, and I think we're gonna do a tiny photo shoot, a tiny stage
awesome.
thing. If you could stand here,
Yeah.
folks. We're gonna take a picture with all of you in the background. Did you want to do that from here, by the way, too, from the stage? Yeah. Okay. Given the engagement and enjoyment you had, I think that makes sense.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Another big round of applause for Lila Williamson, everyone. Okay, thank you again for your questions. As I said, you will be able to submit them the same way. The ballot box is out there if you want to use that. This might be the best way to do it. I'd mentioned there are arts and crafts. There are things for sale outside. We're going to take a 15-minute break. We would love to end this right before 5, and I think the breaks is where there's time for, you know, this to go off the rails. So if you can be back here in 15 minutes, we'll get started right at that time. Thank you. Elsa B. Foxen. Okay, great, great. Bread and butter? Yeah. It's bread and butter. There's toast and jam. I can't keep track. Is it the same company?
Same company. They're next to each other. If you make a mistake, it's right.
Yeah.
What did we decide with the?
So do I contact you? Go down there.
That you'd have to ask Jeff. I haven't figured out how you guys are.
Can I go down there or do I go backstage?
I would go backstage, and then I'll show you down to the stairs.
Out here to go backstage.
Yeah, I think that's the best. Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on how strict you want to be about time.
Yeah,
Is this 20?
Okay. One. I think that's good.
One at a time.
Well, or did you want to use the podium?
Yeah, maybe I should use the podium because there's light.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then you just might want to adjust the mic too.
Okay. Doesn't matter. No,
up to you.
no, I'll put it only use my hand. How many pages is it? It's a big font.
Which one? Yours is a
Mine
big
is a
font?
big
Yeah,
font.
look at this.
I would never. That is
And then the funny thing about this page, I don't even know if you can see this, but it like at one part it got smaller. It was like this, and to fit this in, it went even smaller than smaller.
We're gonna have a really robust, smart analysis at the end of this.
I don't know if my eyes are healthy enough to.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think we're ready for that.
Fortunately, your brain still works.
Yeah, exactly. For now. For now.
Just so that you know, a friend of mine, a Rotarian from New York, is here.
Oh, is that right?
She sat next to me. I giggled when you made the point.
That's very nice. What did you say, Jeff, in the background?
Oh, I just said we're pausing because the live.
We're pausing. I wanted to make sure that you were ready to go. Yeah. I heard a wee.
Thank you for your shout out to Rotary.
Oh, yeah. Kingston and Gananoque. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. You ready? Ready to keep this train moving? Climate train moving? Yeah, sure. Okay. Did you enjoy pastries during your break? Who enjoyed a pastry during their break? Yes. Did any of you take a pastry and then put a second one in your pocket for later? Come on, be honest. Did you? Don't do that. The pastries were brought to us by Bread and Butter, sister company to Toast and Jam. So let's give them a nice round of applause. Those are provided by them. Thanks to them. I think there's still coffee and tea outside, and yeah, we've tried to make this wellness break something that's just not a quick bathroom break, but also a opportunity for some networking, a little snacking, that kind of stuff. Now we're going to have a panel come up, and I'm going to bring somebody else up to tell you about the panel. I mentioned Rotary earlier, and Rotary clubs of Kingston and Gananoque are an event partner, the event partner of this symposium. So I want to bring out Elsa B. Foxen, who is the governor of this area of Rotary. Please give Elsa B. a nice round of applause. Thank you, Elsa B. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ollie. Rotary is really pleased to sponsor this. And youth has that spirit of wanting to do something about climate problems, and events like this is really a catalyst for that energy. Rotary is a global network of more than 1.2 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers in 45,000 clubs. And we believe that we have a shared responsibility to take action on our world's most persistent issues like climate change, polio eradication, and more. Rotary clubs are not based on exclusivity or elitism. We are based on excellence, and excellence in wanting to help. In Kingston, we have been around for 104 years in this community, and we continually welcome new members. We promote peace, we fight disease and poverty, we provide clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. We support education, and most recently, we are very passionate about protecting the environment. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. To be rooted in action resonates with us. We are people of action. And we sponsor Interact. Those are youth clubs for age 12 to 18, about 350,000 interactors in 142 countries get things done. Every Interact club project, great or small, has lasting impact. I hope we have some interactors here today. Any? No? That's sad. We also sponsor RILA, which is a youth leadership academy. It's an annual event in many of our districts. So look for RYLA and apply. There's one in May coming forward. We do youth exchange programs for short-term and long-term exchange, all for the youth. And our Rotary district awards one global grant scholarship of $35,000 per year for a student entering their first year of a master's degree program at a university abroad. A recent global grant scholar was Caitlin Grady. This enabled her to study in Paris, France, where she acquired a master's degree in environmental policy. She's just wrapping her stay up in Paris. Every year we are looking for applicants. It could be one of you. We are here together because we are profoundly concerned about the changes in climate, loss of biodiversity, disrupted ecosystems, and pollution. Laila used the word terrified. I am terrified. I have 5 grandchildren, and I'm scared. Searches worldwide related to climate anxiety or eco-anxiety, and that increased by 4,590% from 2018 to 2023, according to Google's search data. But we are here today because we have hope for healing and hope for regeneration, and hope is rooted in action. So it is my pleasure to invite and introduce the arts panel. Joe, if you can come up. Joe Panion is a theater production designer. He has created for companies touring globally. He has received multiple awards and nominations in his field, and he is currently an adjunct professor at the Dance School of Music and Drama at Queen's. In their free time, if not exploring new woods, they masquerade as an illustrator for tabletop games. There's our panel coming up.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so Joe, if you can just stand that they know who I was talking about. Okay, and then my friend Jerriet, works night and day to help bring positive solutions, climate education to youth. She is Executive Director of Youth Imagine the Future, now in its 3rd year. Youth Imagine the Future is an annual festival of writing and art that encourages youth in our region to research and envision solutions to the climate crisis and a more socially equitable future. She fights for social justice for all, for alternatives to fossil fuel, and the restoration of biodiversity. She is also a little champion forest, a champion of little forests and a writer. From Frog in Hand Productions, we have co-founders and sisters, Colleen and Noelle. Colleen is the artistic director. She works with a broad range of dance and movement organizations as educator, choreographer, collaborator, outside eye, performer, and more. Noelle Hamlin, is production designer with credentials in craft, fine art, and costuming. She has repurposed more than 20 life jackets to draw attention to the destructive environmental effects of the fashion and textile industries. Her one-of-a-kind textile sculptures, accompanied by large-scale photos, might make you think twice about buying the latest fast fashion to wear. Her work is held in permanent collections across North America. And our modern today is Lauren DeRoche. Lauren is a communications officer with the City of Kingston. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elsabe, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you all for being here today. We're really excited to have this arts panel. We have some creative professionals here who have incorporated sustainability into their work in really incredible ways. So without further ado, we're going to get right into some questions, and please, again, join through the Mentimeter, and to ask questions as well. We'll have time to go to the audience at the end. Okay, so my first question here is, in your view, what unique role does the arts sector play in addressing the climate crisis? We're going to go first here to Jerry.
The arts. So when you think about the climate crisis or the biodiversity crisis, you might think science, engineering, tech, studies, poli-sci. But really, the arts is critical because sure, those things are critical too, but we have a whole population across our country and really the world who are thinking the same way or the way they've been thinking for the last 50 years, and we have to nudge them, you know what I mean? Like, we have to change their attitudes a little bit to that kind of attitude that is like, we can do this. Okay, it's a real climate crisis. People are losing their homes. We have to do something about it. We can make changes in our lives, and that's what the arts are for. Because a really great piece of art, a film, a play, a dance, a short story, that's what I write, and in our festival we have short stories and incredible visual arts. So those make you think and they touch your heart. And ultimately they change your attitude a little, I hope, in a more positive way about we can do this. So there you go, that's why I think the arts is really important.
Great, thank you. Joe?
Hi. So my whole career is as a designer, right? It's analyzing space and the way space affects us. And our spaces around the world are changing dramatically fast. And so the way we tell stories, the way we connect, the way we meet is also changing. So the way arts, repeat the question so I get the word right.
Yeah, so in your view, what unique role does the arts sector play in addressing the climate crisis?
Community. Okay, so there we go. Community. Hi, everyone. We just met together and formed a really neat community, right? Design, theater, art creates community wherever it exists. And the thing that I find fascinating and necessary about art's role in combating this crisis is empathy. Empathy not only for the environment we're losing or what's changing, but also for each other and the lives lost, affected by this crisis, and we really need to learn to empathize with each other in space. So that's my big summation really quickly.
That's great, thank you.
All right, these
Colleen?
are some excellent answers already, so I'll try to just put my own sort of spin on things and then pass it over to Noelle. I create dances with Frog in Hand that take place in unusual and startling locations. So we've danced in a splash pad, elevators, a brewery. We've danced all over the place. And a sawmill is another one, yeah. Out on the paths in the woods at night, we've brought people together to explore their neighborhood collectively and to see it in a different way. And I think that we're listening to community stories and we're reflecting it back to people. So Lila was talking about this idea of collective action and not individual action and the power in organizing. I heard Eric Kleinberg speak. He's an American thinker, and he talks about being in a battle between the street and the screen, and that we have to make public spaces amazing in order to kind of compete with the screens. And that's what the arts can do. And when we come out to events like this one and we're together in person, we can remember our power. We can remember that by being together, we can accomplish great things. And I think within Frog in Hand, we're really interested in building social infrastructure. The idea that some place like a theater could be a great place for a conference, not only a play, but also bringing people together and helping them to recognize the ways that they're already connected. So when we have great social infrastructure, we forge stronger ties between one another. So it's not just about fighting climate change, it's about recognizing that we're in this Anthropocene era. We're in this time when the climate has already changed. So how can we help people who are dealing with extreme heat, right? If we have people who are coming out to community events and they're starting to recognize their neighbors, if they don't see that person who lives alone, then maybe they will go and check in on them, right? So they've met at various community events, whatever it is. And that social infrastructure, in my opinion, is what the arts can do, whether it's because you're meeting each other for taking a class together, or the arts build community in an amazing way. And I think that that social infrastructure piece that also has to do with the built environment or the way that we use our spaces, and it helps us to come together as a community to be there for each other in really concrete ways.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure what more I can add to these comments, but I will attempt. I believe that arts hold up a mirror to the world around us. They are a reflection of the world around us, and the world around us is climate change. There's no denying that. So it's our role as artists to sound the alarm. It's our role to say what many institutions cannot say, what the aviation industry cannot say, what the auto industry cannot say, what the fashion industry cannot say, purely because they are the industry. We can literally take those conversations and put them on stage. We can put them in a gallery. We can introduce those conversations and those really difficult conversations that we're often really scared to have. We can make it accessible. And I believe that, as Colleen's saying, it's through emotion. And the power of the arts is through emotion. And so being able to communicate through emotions gets rid of all the statistics. Because we look at a page, we look at the numbers, we look at the spreadsheets, and we get really, really intimidated. We don't understand what it is. But if I can take you from behind your screen and put you in a forest and put on a show, you can then say, hey, I've gone to a performance in the woods. I've never been in the woods in the dark before. Now I care about them. Right? And now you have an experience that you can take back and reflect on, and all of a sudden it becomes really, really important because you've put something emotional in your own personal experience bag, so to speak. I also believe that as an artist and as a maker, we have a responsibility to set up a practice that's ethical and that's sustainable. So we have to look at where our materials come from, where our sourcing comes from. We have to look at the end product as well. What do we do with the sets and the costumes when we're done with them? What do we do when we go to buy them, the materials? Where do they come from? Are they reputable? Are they sustainable? Are they ecological? All of those kinds of questions. And what do we do with them afterwards, right? So we look at the whole life cycle of things as well. So, yeah, I could probably keep going, but I'll leave it there.
That's amazing. Thank you. So today we know we're here for the Climate Symposium, and this year's theme is youth, rooted in action, and how we can involve youth in climate action. I know we have lots of young folks here today, and something that I'm really interested in knowing about the work that all of you do is youth collaboration. How do you involve young voices in your creative process, and what have you learned from working with them? We'll start with you here, Jerry. Can you tell us a little bit about Youth Imagine the Future and the work you do with youth there?
Can you put that photo back up?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is a project and a festival We started it 3 years ago, so we're always updating a slideshow of positive climate solutions that are being used in say, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and around the world. And, you know, solutions that also are, you know, planting Miyawaki forests, enacting laws to protect the waterfalls. So we bring these solutions. These are two from our slideshow. There are tons of wind turbines, and there's lots of ways you can use solar panels, and they're doing them around the world, and there's lots of different kinds of solar panels being used as well. So we bring these solutions to a class. So we offer this slideshow to any teacher. We've given the presentation to 3 universities as well, and to St. Lawrence College, and this past fall to 90 different classrooms across this part of Eastern Ontario. And then we say to students, okay, so we gave you a lot of information about really great things that are actually happening. I think everybody needs this, and by the way, we are happy to share the slideshow with anybody who would like it or can use it. And now we're saying, could you take a little time and could you envision a better future here now? And could you show us? And could you show us either in creative writing by writing a short story that's called a solar punk story? I have some stories in those anthologies, but there's lots of places that are creating even literary magazines that are publishing solar punk. Or could you show us an art? And here's a couple of the incredible art pieces that we saw submitted in the fall. In November, we had over 200 pieces of artistic work submitted. So that one up there, I mean, if you could just look into it for a minute and not think about what's happening in the United States today. Look at that. That's the antidote. And some student in grade 9 has created that. And look at this one over here. This one's from a 16-year-old student in the Limestone Board, and it's called Crowded Table, and it shows a community coming together to share food, and they're passing food back and forth across a crowded table, and it's all different kinds of foods, and they're passing fresh vegetables from a community garden. And the word together is written in Korean, Anishinaabemowin, Hindi, and Ukrainian, along with food from those cultures in that table. Plus you can see they're thinking about renewable energy by some of the pamphlets on the table, and there's a little bouquet of zinnia flowers because some researchers at MIT have taken the cells of a zinnia flower stem and put them in a 3D printer, and they have created wood, you know, 2x4s. And so the table is made from zinnia flower. So I just want to say that our festival is a really great way to, I don't know, encourage students to really think hard about solutions and give them the opportunity to influence their communities, because then we show it for 2 weeks in a big art gallery, the Kingston School of Art, every December, and we're so proud to show their work and to invite all the adult community in and bring different ages together to talk about these big things. And we have a table out front, and I hope you'll come and see some of the art. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just in awe. I'm in awe of this panel of us. What is up behind me? Oh yeah, I started Living Edge, that's right. Oh my goodness, these are the pictures we chose. They're so good. Hi, so I facilitate a lot of artists because I've been on a lot of advisory panels for theater making of reforming spaces, reclaiming spaces to create a venue, to give it access to youth ultimately. And I now have been gifted the chance to teach that in theater architecture at a very established institution, and then sort of blow up that idea of why are we making space in a classic style? Why is this space unique with the limestone on the walls? How can we start looking at new ways of seeing the role of theater in community? How do we cross the lobby? I met a fantastic arts maker in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Tapo Theatre, who created a lobby space between their offices and their performance arts hub because they valued community over anything else in performativity, that they had to, the administrators, pass through and engage with their audiences on the same floor, and that's really important to me. So the question is, how do I engage youth in the way I work? And I've been a part of a lot of mentorships, but I don't see them in one direction. They need to be in two directions. In every case, every course I work, I create sort of syllabus with the students, plan it, but then take it apart. When I work as a collaborator, as a designer, I always make sure that there's an open, clear comm. These are jargons. I always make sure someone can sit. Anyone can sit next to me and watch me work, regardless of where you're coming from, age or other. So these opportunities to watch, but also these opportunities to turn and say, hey, how would you, what color do you see when you think of love, right? Like conversations. So you might see me getting super eager and really into what this panel is talking about, because I find it's all in collaboration. Oh, thank you. Bless you, thank you. But it's all about communication and collaboration. So the involvement of youth is to empower them at the same level, to make sure that they're with you as a co-producer and co-creator, not being talked down to or pandered to. In Living Edge, I made sure that there was an assistant producer that was at the same level of power to me as a producer, that was a student. They have full autonomy, full voice, and anytime I hire on an assistant, I try to nudge a contract. I try to nudge, I also always pay adequately. Important, make bank, don't say no to free labor, unless it's fixing the world. But still, don't say no to free labor. You need to feed yourselves, okay, youth? I want to make sure they get an associate credit, because that credit, even if it's a line of ink, is so big to start and jumpstart a career. But always in conversation. I rambled. This is why the first answer was really quick.
That's great. Can you tell me a little bit about Frog in Hand and the youth work that you do there?
You want to go first?
We are sisters, so we do kind of finish each other's sentences anyway. So I think, excellent, excellent, excellent. So some of the things that we are doing, yes, we built an off-grid geodesic dome for dance and community in Mississauga. What it is, we call it the Art Shelter. It's essentially like a solar-powered dance studio. So you can see this picture here on the left. It's quite a large space. It has a nice sprung floor for dancing, and it's heated by the sun. It is cold, and it's cold today. These types of temperatures can be really difficult to work in there. But essentially what we're doing is we're just doing things differently, and we're undoing things, and we're trying to think about, alternative models. So if we get our power from the sun and we have 3 solar-powered batteries, how do we just use that power, Plugging in heaters to heat our space is very difficult. It eats through the batteries really quickly. So how do we do a warm-up that actually as dancers, makes our bodies ready to move when it is like minus 10 degrees outside or more? And I think that within Frog in Hand, we have what's called the Summer Company. It's been running for almost 8 years. This will be the 8th year, continuously, even through the pandemic. And so we bring around 10 people under the age of 30 together to work together for 8 weeks in the summer. As a student, I scooped ice cream. If I'd been able to actually dance, I think that would have been really exciting. So to give them work in an unusual space that is doing things differently, and where we can be a collaborative, we call it kind of like the Frog in Hand family, where we're all taking care of this space. We have to carry the water in. It's like camping, packing it in, taking the garbage out every day away from the space, and then just sort of dealing with all of these questions of what is this infrastructure, and how can we actually live with it and in it, and it helps us to realize the things that we often take for granted. Things like people walk in and they go, where can I plug my phone, And we go, well, you have to go to the grid, or if it's a sunny day, then that's great, but if it isn't, then we might not have power to spare. It's one of those things of being mindful about what seems to be given, and that is resources. How do we take those batteries out into a field and do a performance there. We've done this before. This summer we did our first mixed bill performance with a stage out in a field, and it was completely solar powered. All of the sound, all of the lights, all of the everything. And so, you know, when you're plugging something in and you're like, is this gonna make it through, you know, an hour-long performance? And it did. So there are ways of doing things together actively that are just so different than the existing models. And it's not to say we don't need those models, but we do need to kind of like smash things down and see what else is there, you know, see what alternatives exist. I'm gonna pass it to you because I think you have more to add.
Maybe, yeah. Yes, so we built the dome. It's 100% off-grid, solar powered, and it's a creature. It's a wonderful living creature, and we're still getting to know it. And yes, we run the summer company program pretty consistently at the dome. And I just want to jump into the other half of the question of why it's important. I think youth are an opportunity for everybody to send a message to the future. And we are in the middle, as was said this morning, or the last speaker, we're in the middle of the climate crisis. Let's face it, we are in the middle of it, and we need everybody to come together. We can't discriminate between gender, we can't discriminate between age, we can't discriminate between anything. It is a crisis. It requires all of us, which means youth, right? Regardless of age, regardless of gender. Every single person will be affected. And they stand on the shoulders, youth stand on the shoulders of what come before. So our model of the art shelter is an attempt to give people something to stand on and to demonstrate, as Colleen said, alternate role models and alternate ways of creating an arts-based practice where you have to pay attention to where you get your resources, even if it's things like water and power. So that's just my, yeah. Oh, yeah, Stories in the Woods. Yeah. Joe was on that show. Stories in the Woods was created 2019. And it's an immersive experience that takes the audience through a sawmill at night, through the forest paths, and the story is revealed as you go. So it really is truly scenography as the world around you. It really, you're hiking through the set, basically. And it was many people's first time being in the woods at night, as I mentioned before. So the audience members had a completely new experience, and we were using what was around us already. We were taking people on an adventure. They had to put bug spray on. Many people found that uncomfortable. And it's a weird thing to do, to have to go to a show and put bug spray on. But we use what's around us, and we use the environment, and we consciously at Frog in Hand choose to deliberately make work about climate change and put that front and center. And many of our pieces then therefore bring up questions about climate change and what can we do, and imagines a post-apocalyptic future. Yeah, anyway, I could keep talking again, but.
I wanted to just say it's really interesting to hear you talk about solar punk and the visions of the future. This performance here was, a lot of our work tells science fiction stories because we're trying to imagine and project the consequences of our current actions and inactions, and what is the next, 50 years, even the next 10 years. It's not that far in the future. Just imagining, like, what are the consequences of the things that we're doing today, and just telling stories within our community, holding space for that uncertainty, and using our imaginations to kind of dream about it in radical ways.
I want to jump on that, if that's okay. I loved it because the thing you asked me to do as a designer was, can you make electricity a monster? And I loved that prompt, once upon a time. I want to go back to the why youth. I think I skipped really quickly about it, and I have to go back to where I come from. And you said I had to say this story, and I wasn't going to, but thank you. I have cheerleaders up here, everyone. Cheerlead each other. I came from not an affluent background. There was death that touched my family very, very young. And so I had to find stories to tell in my own time in my grandmother's basement. So I read a lot of National Geographic. I'm not going to say if they're good or bad, but it made me see nature in the world at a very, very impressionable age, but also a very desperate age to make story. And what was fascinating was before my father passed, he worked as a water worker, a city worker in the city of Guelph. And we were in constant, when I was younger we weren't, when I was just around his passing, in water crisis mode. We had to conserve water. And this happened to be the same community that Nestle put down their aquifer withdrawal system. So they were using a lot of the water from the township's water. And double-edged sword. I thought at first, I sort of drank that punch and was so happy that the water from my town was going to people in crisis after a hurricane or a major event. But then you realize, it wasn't just that. Our whole community was on water watch. So I became very activated as a youth, and I really wanted to program shows, do shows. And no one would give the opportunity to a young teenager with no financial background, with no parents endorsing that teenager, an opportunity to tell their story. So I had to find that community. I had to find that producer that would give me an opportunity to, hands off, do my story, tell my story, and get it out there, either it be through design or direction or whatnot. And it was an amazing leap of faith, I say adult, an older person gave me, and trust, completely blank check to do something. And did it open me up to a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse? Yes. I was on the hook for a lot of thousands of dollars to a theater company that tried to run away with my money as a teenager. But an opportunity was given. And that's huge, right? I'm opening a door to a lot more questions for a biographical discussion. But the opportunity was given, and so now, why youth are important is that I know there's hundreds more that need that door opened. And I also want to protect them from those abusers. But thank you. Thank you. It's important because I want your story. The world needs your story, right? It's important because it needs it more than ever. And the only reason why any of us are up here is because at some point we were out there, right? At some point we listened to people talking like this, and then we felt empowered to do it. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Noelle, you mentioned, I think you did, about how important it was making any kind of art that we think about the source of our materials. Yeah. And I just saw one of our young students who has art here in the hallway. Charlie, can you wave? Right over there. So Charlie made an incredible piece of art that's out in the hallway, and I just want to say that her art, their art shows Kingston from a kind of upper view, and it's beautiful, and it's been kind of retreed with little forests all around, and around City Hall, and a rooftop that's a garden. But the important thing is that Charlie made their own paint.
Amazing.
Yes.
And I just wanted to let you know.
Yes.
And
Materiality for the win.
Nikki can tell you more about it if you go to the table to see the art.
I will. Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, we'll have to definitely take a look at that outside after. So I do want to make sure that we have enough time for audience questions. So I'm going to ask one more, I think, that is really going to hopefully resonate with the audience here. And that is a call to action, a takeaway that everybody here today can take home with them. So if you have one message for the audience to take home with them, or one action that they could take, what would it be?
Okay, can I do two? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna break the rules. One, I said it already, those that have the means and space, time, money to support youth initiatives, do it. I dare you. It always pays back tenfold. The other collective action has been said many times. Look, now I'm warming up. I'm a very shy person. I feel like I can trust you all. It's one that's been said a lot, but I want you to kind of do it now. I would love call to action for you to talk to the row in front of you or behind you and tell that person what body of water you come from. So do that now. If you're in the front row of the balcony, yell down. Like, I want you to talk to people you didn't come with. Niagara Falls, yeah. Speed River here, Grand River Conservation Authority.
river.
Yeah. Look at all of these amazing water systems. Look at this. Look at this watershed moment we're having. Look at this watershed we've just made. This is how it starts, right? Community isn't just like-mindedness. Yes, community is conversation. I got them going. It was all the sugar too.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. We'll bring it back in. But my call to action is this. Did you hear how loud it got in here? Right? Just telling where we came from. More of that. More community making.
Me? Mine's pretty simple. Darn your socks.
Yeah.
Darn your own socks, and I'll tell you why. It makes you appreciate where they come from. It makes them last longer. Gets rid of fast fashion, which we all need to do. And it gives you skills to mend and to make and not throw out. And if we can all do that, we can actually make a difference. We can actually fight climate change. Simply mend your socks and sew your buttons back on.
Nice.
Very simple.
Great practical advice.
Yeah, very, very tangible. Mend things, make, appreciate that somebody has made things that you are wearing. They came from all over the world. Shop in your closet, shop in your friend's closet. Think of where your things come from. Think about the materials, where they come from. Think about your resources. Objects are materials. They come from somewhere, right? We forget. We just go and we buy a $5 shirt. Well, actually, what's the cost of that $5 shirt? It's more than that. So, darn your socks.
My call to action is hold one another. Holding one another. Someone once said to me that like when we hold each other accountable, we're also holding each other. So this idea is that I appreciate the optimism that's here, and I think we need to definitely have optimism, but within that we also need to acknowledge the hardship, the difficulty, the fear late at night. We need to acknowledge the frightening future that is potentially there. And if we hold each other, then we realize as well that the fight isn't over. If we hold each other up, we can lean on one another, and then we can just keep going. The idea that we're equal to this task if we do it together. So if we hold each other, then we can do this.
Nice. So if you're feeling down about the future, I think it's important that you think about who are you following on social media and what films and books are you, looking at? What are you surrounding yourself with and filling yourself with? Try to choose more positive influences and positive people. There are solar punk podcasts, and there are people like the Canadian urban designer Brent Todarian. There's eco-justice. There's lots of really positive people out there. David Suzuki Foundation, that you could start following them instead. And like Lila said today, take a break when you need it. Take a break. And I love that idea of hold each other up, make community, and mend your own clothing. Like, these are such great calls to action. But I do want to end with, be a little political. Like, don't be afraid. Stand up. Fight. I think youth, as we're going to see with autumn soon, youth can be very powerful and very, very political. And even if you're not at the voting age yet, you can send an email or a polite letter, or you can stand up and talk at a meeting to any councillor or anybody running at municipal, provincial, or federal level, and you can say, hey, I have concerns about this, or what about this, or I'm thinking about this. And you need to speak and use your voice, because I think youth are powerful, and sometimes us adults, I'm older than these wonderful guys, And I've noticed that as we go through these stages in our lives, there's this big chunk of time when we adults are so busy, you know, taxes, jobs, maybe we're bringing up kids, and the whole, when we have to cook and we have to get groceries, and we like barely know what's going on or who the mayor or the prime minister is. And we aren't able to see through all of that. But youth have a clear sight sometimes. And youth, maybe we've seen some politicians fall off their pedestals, and so maybe we become a little cynical sometimes. But youth are fighters. They haven't seen that yet, and we need that. We need you fighting, and we'll be with you, okay? Fight.
That was a great thing to end on. I'm so sorry, you have a timeline. Use your voice, yeah. If you're also shy or had a speech impediment and couldn't talk at all, use your art. Right? Like, use a hunk of clay. Use some Play-Doh beside your bed. Use whatever you need to get your thoughts out. Yeah.
Great way to end it off. Amazing. So I hope we're going to have some time for some audience questions here. Yes. Okay. So one question we have here is, if you could swap jobs with somebody sitting next to you, who would it be and why?
Oh, I would love to swap jobs with Noelle, because I have an idea of what she does. I don't know. Anybody have siblings? You know, you kind of have a sense of what they do, but it would be great to know in my own like hands how to do the things she does, because she's really amazing at doing things that involve fabric and textiles and mending things. She has taken things that were mostly a rip and made them back into clothing, and I know I can see her do it, but I don't know how she does it. Like, my hands can't do that. And there are so many times when I go to thrift shops and I want to buy something secondhand, but it doesn't quite fit me, and I'm like, I could ask my sister to fix this. So I would love to spend a day, you know, in your life and just sort of swap jobs and know what it's really like to mend things.
I'd swap jobs with you, because I'd like to know what it's like to be able to move the way you move, because I can't do what she does. So, yeah.
We're both afraid to speak, yeah.
Yeah, we do have, I see that we do have like 12 questions, so we can jump to the next one here. Jerry.
This is you.
What was your favorite story to create and why?
Okay, that is, I love writing. Oh, so I wrote a story called Mad Scientists, and it's in a literary journal online from Fairlight Books in the United Kingdom. You can see it online. And the reason I'm mentioning that one, because I love them all, is that in it, a teacher a young occasional teacher comes into a grade 8 class and is stuck doing a big science project with the class on water, on the importance of water. And in it, the teacher introduces the class to Autumn Peltier and shows the class the clips of Autumn speaking to the Prime Minister at age 13 and speaking to the United Nations. And through the journey of the teacher and this incredible chaos within all those kids on different projects, and sometimes they don't get along and things don't always work out, and struggling with a cranky principal, there's this whole sense of chaos in the classroom. Come on, if you're a teacher, tell me I'm right about that, right? Right, it's the sense of chaos. And I think maybe that one is the most like life was for me when I was teaching. I just recently retired. And maybe I'm thinking of that one as one of the ones I love the most, just because I'm thinking of Autumn Peltier.
Thank you. That's amazing that you're able to have her here today, too. Okay, how do you measure the impact of art on changing people's perception and actions or industries? That's a big question.
Oh,
that's hard to tange.
Yeah, right. Well, we sent out a Google feedback form to all the teachers, jury members, and we're asking the teachers to ask their classes about when they participated in this festival when the students in the class chose to create art or write short stories showing a better future, you know, did it change them at all? And so we're just starting to get some of the feedback now back. And in general, what we have been told anecdotally by teachers and some parents, and maybe a couple of the students, is that when they actually create the art or write the short story, it's transformative.
That's delicious. I love that word. Measuring the impact is always so tricky, right? So you have to look at data sets. Yay, we're back to data, everyone. Nice to meet you. Data sets. So fascinating enough, we do have metrics showing that the creative industries are getting better at sustainability. Our main impact now, I know we hate carbon footprints 100%. Yeah, that was totally some punch to drink. But we have realized the main carbon draw on doing theater is not necessarily the lights in the air, but it's getting the audience to the show. That the transportation to get here is the worst impact. So, hey, free tickets for buses. Right?
Shout out to Kingston
There's an
Transit.
impact. And the Guelph Music Festival, which is the one that's the big one, Hillside, realized the same issue, and they decided to start doing programming of their shows on a bus from TO into the show to improve ticket sales on that bus. There's an impact. Other big impacts we've seen at the government level, even that idea of like community and the fact that this crisis we're up against goes beyond borders of what our practice is. The Arts Councils now fund less rigid means of what art is. What is art, activism art versus fine art versus theater versus literary is now a little bit more diversely approached by the councils. They're still working out how that works nicely, but it's a movement. Artists didn't have protection at the beginning of the pandemic. They did partway through because of lobbyists within our unions that were making sure we're doing impacts like this. They're keeping the metrics. So I think those are very easy, tangible ones to see. Cultural shifts, a little bit harder. But the fact that we're on a main stage right now is a big shift than we would have been 25 years ago. So something's happening. Something is happening, even if it's micro in the sense.
I want to respond to the how. How do you measure the impact? I think we are jumping on the same thing, right? I think metrics that matter to me, do people feel safe in their neighborhoods? Can they walk around at night? We work in a field at night in the middle of a construction site. It is an ugly place, and we're trying to make it more beautiful and bring things to it that wouldn't have happened perhaps without our community, which talks about vibrancy. Can people come and rest there? We measure it by asking people. We get testimonials, we hear stories, people tell us. It's so much more than a survey. It's a relationship that we want to build with our audience and our people who are coming out to our events and that kind of thing. I love that question. Do you want to, that's very specific for us. Do you want to answer that?
Sure. It goes back to, as Colleen says, the mud and the dirt that's on our construction site. When we were 3 and 5 years old, our parents were renovating the house, and they sent us outside to go and play. And we gathered up all of these building materials, and we built a pond, and we lined it with vapor barrier, and then we gathered up this cast of frogs, and we put on a frog circus. And I don't think they were really frogs. I think they were actually toads. I don't think they were very willing, but nevertheless, there was a full frog circus going on in the backyard. There's pictures of Colleen and I covered in mud. I think it's on our website, yeah. And honestly, I think she's 3, and I think I'm about 5 years old, and that was our first show. Fast forward a little bit, we still believe in that ethos. We still believe in the mud and the dirt of the backyard and coming together to create something that's basically from the mud and the dirt of the backyard. So we hold on to those frogs. Metaphorically, we try not to squish them, and we try to nurture them, and we hold them up, and we remember where we came from, and remember the fun of just having fun in the backyard and putting on a show. Did that answer the question?
That's great. What prompted you to start incorporating climate change activism into your art?
As I said earlier, it's the world around us, and it just is. It just is, yeah.
I have eco-anxiety. Anyone else have eco-anxiety here? When you feel that way, sometimes as an artist, you want to do something with that feeling. Put it towards something and see if other people share your feelings. And to see it painted outside of you and to walk around it. So when we created Stories in the Woods, which is a show very much inspired by climate change science fiction, it was really cool because it felt like I could see the things I was worried about like outside of me, and I could talk with other people about them, and that's sort of the magic of art making. Yeah, and also because there's a sense of we have to do something. We have to do something. Artists are often really great at dreaming, but we also need to do, and so it's about putting those two things together.
Oh my gosh.
Some practical questions for Frog in Hand. Is the dome hot in the summer, and how is it cooled?
Oh my gosh, anyone done Bikram yoga, like hot yoga? Essentially in the summer it's very, very hot in there, and in the winter it's very, very cold in there. How do we cool it? We open the doors and there's a breeze off the lake, honestly. We cool our own bodies, like we drink ice water. We have to, this is part of the idea of how do I explain this? Being with the weather every day rather than insulating ourselves from the weather. So many spaces that we like to inhabit, like malls or even our own homes, you won't feel the impact of the changes of the weather. When it's hot, we get hot. There's not a lot of shade. So we do what we can, essentially. We do have fans, and we have a shade net, which is something that you saw. They look like sails, and they're from the farming industry, so we put them up to try to shade ourselves a little bit. But yes, when you see people wearing sunglasses and stuff in all the photos on our Instagram, it's because they're, like, it's bright and it is hot. And these days we had to, on Saturday we all had to wear shoes, like thick shoes to dance in because the ground is cold. Yeah.
Go to the next question. We'd love to hear some recommendations for speculative fiction, eco-utopian futures that inspire new ways of relating to each other and around the world.
Oh, there are lots, but they're really just, it's the beginning of solar punk as a popular subgenre of fiction writing. I would start at your local library, and if they don't have solar punk anthologies, I would ask them to, because you can request your library to order anything, but there's quite a lot. What's wrong?
We have them. They have them there.
Yeah, our library has them, but if any of you are from farther away, make sure that your library has them as well. And so I'd start with reading those, and then, I don't know, I'm always looking for them, so I'm not trying to say anything about, but if you go on my little baby author website, I list magazines that are carrying some climate fiction that is positive. So solar punk is, I mean, dystopian fiction is also important to make people think, right? But in the end, if you read enough Hunger Games, you're a little bit depressed. Come on, let's be honest. So solar punk is climate fiction, but it's hopeful. And it's not going to leave you that way. Anybody else have
I have just really quickly, I'm trying to write a list and it's never going to be enough, but I would go to Becky Chambers' Monk and Robot. I think anything by Jeff Vandermeer, the Southern Reach trilogy, which is suddenly now there are 4 books, so it's not a trilogy. That one's really good. The Bone Marrow Thieves, Indigenous futurisms are fantastic, and Afrofuturism as well. There are just so many on the list, but those are particular genres within speculative fiction that have really moved me.
And I'm going to plug role-playing games. Play some role-playing games. Speculative fiction role-playing games. Yeah. Oh.
We just have a nice comment here. Thanks for being great people. And I think we have time for 1 or 2 more. So, what made you first decide that art could be used to make a difference in climate change? Is there anything that inspired you or that you saw that you thought you'd be able to do it too?
Art has always made a difference. Noel and I were talking about the idea of the clown, the fool. The fool was the only person whose job it was to criticize the king in front of the king. And there's so much power in that. So for me, it's like returning to the roots of what really great art can be and do. It has always been that. It can be our collective conscience. It can be the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. So for me, it's like, it has always been able to do that. And I should say I practice contemporary dance, and that's a particular kind of dance that takes that kind of commentary seriously.
For me, art is my life. Art is the career I've chosen. It's the industry that I am in. But just because that's what I've chosen, and like our panel here is about the arts. But I think a takeaway is also that regardless of what field you're in, you can make a difference. It doesn't matter if you're in medicine, if you're in education, if you're, I don't know, in the restaurant industry in particular. Any industry can make a difference, and it just so happens that I'm in the arts, so that's why I choose the arts, and I see the impact of climate change on my industry, and I see the impact of fashion as one of the top polluters and one of the top contributors to climate change. So of course I want to stand up and rattle the cage and say this is wrong. And you have the power to do that regardless of what industry you're in. You can stand up and rattle the cage and say, I'm in education and we're gonna educate people on this, right? Like it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Yeah, so you can do something about it.
I love that. I want to jump on that before I answer this question because it's very pointed at my abstraction, which is great. Never mind. No, we can skip it. We can. It's fine. Art for me, nature was always a safe space for me. It's where I ran to. Queer. It was the one place I never felt judged. I didn't feel I had to perform anything other than just be and be present and like enjoy a leaf on a tree. I could just enjoy being outside. And so my art always stemmed from that place of safety, that I could be as loud as I needed to be in my art from there. So it always was connected. And then the first time I ever did a picture, I used a lot of mud and leaves that I grounded up and made into something. I'm like, oh yeah, it can be also in the work. But anyway. What water you come from? We are mostly water, but we are impacted by our environments, the way we think, the way we act, the way we walk, our pathways of desire, which is a lovely term I picked up yesterday. And I grew up on the Speed River in Guelph, and I spent a lot of time doing those doodles along that river, and it's impacted the way I see the world, sitting riverside. So I always love asking people what water they're from, because it sometimes tells me a little bit about where they're from, but also if they watch water. Like I watch water.
That's a great question.
Great. And then we're going to go to our last question here before we conclude. So what inspired you to be an activist? I know we talked a little bit about it before.
Yeah, I think I talked about it a bit with a company moving into my hometown. Stealing all the water, let's just say it, for profit. That, and also, this might get heavy suddenly, talking about futurism. I realized my family line was ending with me. And I'm like, if I don't become an activist, I need to do it for others, right? Like, there's no legacy other than this. And I don't care about legacy, I care about making the world better for the next round after me. So not that the end is scary or that it's what's the word I'm looking for? Immortality or mortality. It's nothing about that. It was, I got nothing to lose other than the friendships in my life, and the friendships in my life are based on that activism. So I'm not going to lose it, only strengthen it.
Do you?
Can I put some words in your mouth, Colleen? Okay. I have to brag a little bit because my sister single-handedly raised all the funding to build the art shelter, which is pretty incredible, by grant writing and by attending council and getting permits approved and all of that. So I'm a little bit proud. I'm the proud older sister. And I find that to be incredibly inspiring. You had a vision and you saw it through, and we can now walk into the dome because of the work that you have done. And I don't want to speak for you, but if I can observe, the struggle that we went through to actually get it built made it that much more enriching and exciting and worth it when the dome actually went up because of the pure struggles of building an alternate off-grid shelter in the middle of a sunflower field in Mississauga, which is a bit of an arts desert. And so we have to, no, it's not a bit, it is an arts desert, let's just face it. But that's the reason why it's important. And I think seeing the work that Colleen has done to be able to say we've got a dome makes everything worth it. And I think that that's a reason to do what we do, is to say it matters. And we can make a change. We can actually stand up and we can write grants and we can rally and rock the cages and we can build alternate sources of arts funding or art spaces. And I had another thought. I can't remember what it was, but it was mostly just being inspired by you and the work that you've done because it's very, very, very difficult. And you, as said before, there are lots of roadblocks that come up and you have to work your way around them. And I think we have to stand up for our own community, because that's what Colleen was doing when she built the dome, was addressing an actual problem. We wanted to rent space in the middle of the pandemic, and we're out in a rainstorm trying to rehearse for a local show, and we have nowhere to go. We don't have a space because we can't afford to rent any theater spaces. We can't afford to rent any rehearsal halls. So she went ahead and built the dome. That's her response to the problem. And she went to City Hall and said, these small spaces are incredibly important. And so the reaction, like being an activist just by doing and just by being and choosing where you put your energy. And you can take action that way, just simply by doing, right? Well, it sounds silly, but yeah, what you choose to put your energy in.
I will try to be quick, I know. Thank you for saying those things, that was lovely. We did it together, and I wanted to say, there's this part in the third Harry Potter movie where they time travel and stuff, and Harry is seeing this person cast a spell. Remember, it's the Patronus, and he's like, someone saved me, like someone saved me, and I know it's about to happen, and I want to see who it was, and then he realizes it was him. Spoilers, like however 10 years later. That part is really important though, when we think of it as a metaphor that if you're looking for like a hero, if you're literally looking for someone to come forward and save us all because we're in such a terrible situation, well, the good news is that you're the person. Yeah. You can do it.
That's it.
Harry Potter reference. What a good note to end things off on. Another round of applause for our incredible panelists. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. And on that note, we're going to pass it back over to Ali Hassan.
We're going to do another photo shoot.
Oh, we're going to do another photo.
10-minute break or 15? We have to. Okay, great. We're going to take one more picture here with all of you with the background behind you. So you can take that. It's a crime that your shoes aren't in this, but yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. We're going to take another wellness break. This time it'll be 10 minutes, just so we can finish, again, close to 5. So 10 minutes. If you come back at 3:40, we'll be here with Autumn Pelletier. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it, everyone. Yes, welcome back. Welcome back to the last chunk. Our headlining speaker. You feel good, everyone? What's the energy like up there? Yeah? Tayandanaga was born with energy. How's LaSalle doing? Yes, okay, all right, very good. One of you has your jackets on for a weird reason. Okay. All right, we're going to start it. We can lower the house lights, I think. Yeah, let's make everybody comfortable. And we've got Autumn Pelletier coming on in just minutes. Before Autumn comes on, I want to introduce you to somebody who is part of the KYCC, Kingston Youth Climate Council. Everybody give him a nice round of applause. Max Manga. Max, come on out. They're very nice people. I know they look mean from up here, but they've been very kind. Max, tell us about KYCC.
Yeah, of course. So KYCC is the Kingston Youth Climate Council. It's a volunteer program for high school students that we run through the public library. And our KYCC volunteers help us create themed book lists that are climate related, and they plan climate related events for children and youth. So for example, last spring, we hosted a bee-themed pollinator event where we brought bees into the library and we had an educational component regarding bees and pollinators.
Very nice. When and where do you meet?
We meet 2 Tuesdays a month at the Calvin Park branch after school, so in the evening.
Okay, great. Tell us how people, how the young people in Kingston get involved.
Sure, you can get involved by going to the volunteer page on the library website, or you can come find the library booth, which is on the second floor, just outside of the doors. You can come find us at the booth, and you can grab a bookmark to get involved.
Okay, KYCC, everyone. Thanks, Mac. Thanks for telling us about that. Okay. Look up Max Manga and look up the KYCC. Great way to get involved. You can't say you don't know. All right, now we are about to bring on Autumn Pelletier. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Autumn Pelletier if you don't know about her. She's the Chief Water Commissioner for the Anishinaabe Nation. She is an Indigenous rights and water activist who has made waves around the globe. At age 12, at an Assembly of First Nations event, she gained some notoriety for admonishing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for the choices he had made, particularly around Indigenous rights. He made a promise, I will protect the water, and she's held him accountable to that ever since, till this very day. Yes. At age 13, she spoke at the United Nations General Assembly. If I could tell you what I was doing at 12 and 13, I mean, I can't tell you because half of it I don't remember, and half of it, I mean, you're too young to hear about the embarrassing, despicable things I was doing. So I can't even talk about it. It is unbelievably impressive. So many accolades, including the Sovereign Medal of Exceptional Volunteerism from the Governor General of Canada and Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. She's been a featured speaker for the World Economic Forum. She's been shortlisted for the International Children's Peace Prize 4 times. And in 2021, she was featured in Maclean's Top 50 Canadian Power List. 2022, she was an honorary doctorate inductee from Royal Roads University and received the Daniel G. Hill Award from Ontario Human Rights Commission, as well as the Emerging Canadian Leader Award from the Public Policy Forum. You're about to see her in just moments. First, we are going to start things here. Yes, that woo and the enthusiasm that you should have for Autumn, hold that for just a minute. We're going to begin with a screening of a short film that is called The Water Walker, followed by a conversation with Autumn.
Whispering in her dreams. Water has no flag. Water knows no race. The earth's belly grew until her waters broke. creation took its first breath.
I've been a water advocate since I was 8 years old. My Auntie Josephine, she inspired people globally, raising awareness and praying for the water. She did pass away about 6 months ago now. Her dying wish was for me to carry on her work.
A young leader from Canada. She's known as a water warrior, internationally known for the work that she has done and the issue of safe and clean water. Autumn Peltier, she's been on...
I know there are people in this room who deeply disagree with our position to move ahead with the Kinder Morgan pipeline.
What did you want to say to him? I just said to him, I'm very unhappy with the choices you made and broken promises to my people. Then he said, I understand that. All I said was the pipelines, and then he said, I will protect the water.
The water is the lifeblood of Mother Earth, and without that lifeblood, none of us would be here. Nothing would be here. Where I come from, when the Creator molded us, pieces of us fell down. When those pieces hit the earth, they started to grow up as medicine. When the water's contaminated, the medicines are contaminated. Certain medicines don't grow anymore. Certain animals don't migrate in certain territories. When they're eating contaminated vegetation and water and they're getting sick, and then we're eating the animals, we're starting to get sick. And so that's how we're all connected. I'm gonna smudge this dress. We're gonna cleanse it. So when you're out wearing this dress, speaking at the United Nations, you'll be blessed and protected, and you'll speak from the heart, connect with the ancestors.
The spirit of water exists in every raindrop, in every stream and puddle, in the veins of trees, and in every tear we shed for joy or grief. Water walkers, defenders of water. We do it for the next generations, for the babies of all species. Keep going. Stay strong.
When I was 8 years old, I was attending a water ceremony in Serpent River First Nation. When I was at the ceremony, I went to the bathroom, and all over the walls, signs that said, not for consumption, don't touch or drink the water, and boil water advisory. I asked my mom, what does all that mean? What's the boil water advisory? And then she told me what all of it meant. There's kids that were my age that did not know at all what it's like to drink clean water from a tap. People living in third world conditions in a rich country where things like that shouldn't be happening. There's a lot of youth becoming activists. We're realizing what kind of future the adults today are giving us for tomorrow.
So I'm excited about Friday. It's the Youth March. I'm excited to see how many youth and young people are going to be there. It's a big event, this climate summit. It's in New York City. And the best part of it is you'll never forget turning 15 because there's so many things happening on that day. There's going to be the huge climate strike, and speaking at the United Nations. That was right here. There.
Our children are unable to see obstacles in their path, for they are always looking up to us and never at their feet. When we encounter an obstacle in their way, it is our responsibility to remove it. We are the protectors of our children, and when we fail, the children must learn to protect themselves.
This will be my second time speaking to the United Nations, and I know when I speak to the United Nations, I'm being heard.
Knowing the lineage that she comes from, you know, there was a lot of fighters, there was a lot of warriors. Even on her dad's side of the family, she comes from a line of chiefs. It doesn't surprise me that she is who she is. But it's hard work. Sometimes it can be challenging for her because, you know, she's a kid still. Media exposure, it comes with a price as well, the work. You get treated a different way, and there was a point where we didn't even feel like going out for a while. We just kind of stayed home. We'd only go out if we had to. That was really hard.
I was being bullied because of the jealousy from other kids, because not a lot of kids get to do the stuff I was doing, like meeting the Prime Minister at a young age.
At first she didn't even tell me, but I started noticing different changes in her.
I came home with a bunch of cuts because they were slamming my face to the snow and sitting. They were trying to suffocate me. And then my face was slammed into the fence, and it makes me really emotional. That was really hard for me.
As she stood in cold and ice, and in heat and rain, around each bend of the lake she thanked the water. At each puddle and stream, she asked the water for help. Soon the people started to join in, and the water started to become clean.
Us kids were having to stand up as leaders. We're advocating for our future. Kids should be in school, and like, even me right now, I should be in school. Actually, act now, not tomorrow, not next year, not next month, today. I'm missing a week of school to speak to the United Nations, to try and tell adults how we're seeing our future, and the way we're seeing our future is not in a good way. Everything is about money to the adults. You can't eat money. You can't drink oil. One day I'll be an ancestor, and I want my descendants to know I use my voice so they can have a future. I've heard of places like Flint, Michigan, 6 nations of the Grand River. All across these lands, we know somewhere where someone can't drink the water. Why so many, and why have they gone without water so long? We can't live in our mother's womb without water. As a fetus, we need that sacred water for development. The sacred significance is that my mother comes from her mother's water, my grandmother comes from her mother's water, and my great-great-grandmother comes from her mother's water. No child should grow up not knowing what clean water is, or never knowing what running water is. Now is the time to warrior up and empower each other to take a stand for our planet. Let's do this for for our great-grandchildren. Thank you, Miigwech. I do wish my Auntie Josephine could see what I'm doing right now. She's always taught me to keep on going and never give up. No matter what people say about your work or what you're doing, you know what you want. Pray for the water because the water doesn't have a voice, you're speaking up for it.
To our mother, whose waters broke on that first day and made song possible, we sing now for you, to you, with you, drumming to your heartbeat, with nothing left to give but our bones and flesh as an offering, so that we too can drink in life as our journey continues for another 1,000,000 years and another 1,000,000 cycles around the sun.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage, Autumn Peltier. Great. Hi, Autumn. Thank you so much for being here in Kingston today. It's great to have you.
Yes, thank you.
We do have some questions here, and then we're going to hope to jump right into some audience questions, so please contribute using the Mentimeter link if you have it. Okay, so the first question that I have for you today is, people Google you all the time. What isn't true?
I feel like the only misconception would be like, you know, I'm of course an Indigenous rights and water activist, but that's kind of the only thing it really highlights. You know, it doesn't really talk about like me as a person, and I feel like that's, you know, there's much more, of course, to like, you know, everybody has their profession, everybody has their day-to-day job that they show up to, but at the end of the day, everybody is their own unique individual. And I find that that's probably one of the misconceptions that, you know, you don't really see when you Google. You don't really know the personal me or the real Autumn. So I feel like that would be the one thing from Google.
That's great. So as we know, you've been many places and you've shared the stage with so many people. We saw some of it earlier in the Water Walker as well. What moment resonates with you the most?
I think that what resonates with me the most would be, it's a hard one because I've been to so many amazing different places and work with so many amazing different people. But I think that the one that stands out for me the most would be when I spoke at the United Nations and when I spoke at the World Economic Forum. Each of those times I was, of course, very young, but I think it stands out for me because there was so, like, you go into these spaces and you expect them to be like, you know, adults, people that are, you know, politicians, leaders, all those kinds of jobs. But you see a group of youth activists, and you kind of stand out from the crowd, and I think that's like the best part about it, because like youth in these spaces, you're not used to that. You're not used to seeing, you know, youth speak up about world or political issues or social justice issues, and so when you do, I just feel like that room is that much more stronger. Like the moment the youth walk in, it's just like, like, you know, the room is just like that much more valuable now. So I feel like that's probably like the best experience, is just like working with the youth in the different spaces that I've been to.
Great. Because you've been to so many places, many news outlets have quoted you. One of those quotes is, "Water is a living organism," and that stands true today. Can you share your thoughts on this connection?
Yes, well, the connection between water and, Anishinaabe people, indigenous people, is very complex, and it's very deep and very important. And when I think about that question specifically, I think about our very first teachings that we get, and, these teachings, everybody gets them because we all come from water. We were all at one point in our mother's womb. Without water, none of us would be here today because we need that for our sacred development. And we believe that the very first teaching that we learn is how to love the water and how to love our mother, because, we're living in our mother's womb for 9 months. And again, that's what we need to, develop and become a human being. And so that's why it's so sacred and so powerful and so important, because water is literally the lifeblood of Mother Earth. It's the lifeblood of literally everything in this world that, of course, needs water to survive. And, as I mentioned in the documentary, we talk about how everything's interconnected. If the water is sick, the water life, like the fish, the animals that live within the water, are also going to be sick. And we as people, also animals, eat, that vegetation, eat those things. So everything is literally interconnected, and even the medicines that grow around, the contaminated water will also be contaminated. So our medicines are contaminated. And so it's all interconnected in a way, and that's why we believe it's so important to protect it. And we also believe that as Anishinaabe people, we're automatically given the role and responsibility to protect the land and water, because we are people of the land. We're people who live off the land. We understand the land in such a deep way that, some people may not. And so that's kind of why I believe it's so important to talk about the importance of water and our role as not only Anishinaabe people, but our role as human beings to be caretakers of the land and the water.
So we have a lot of students here with us today, and I think that this question's really going to resonate with them. So you're a full-time student as well as doing this activism, and I'm wondering, as you juggle school and activism, what keeps you grounded?
I think, it's very taxing to be in school and do my work at the same time, being able to show up in so many places, but keeping me grounded, I honestly do so much. Staying connected with my culture, praying or being by the water, finding those sacred elements that I grew up around and being able to connect with those has really helped me in keeping balancing my spirituality and my own mental health and well-being and what matters to me. And also ensuring that I have a really good familial and peer support group, because I find that you really need those people who just remind you to they just bring those those good vibes out of you, those good things. And I think that having those things around you is so important. And as much as you may be passionate about your work or what you do, whether that's advocacy or not, ensuring that you have things you also love doing at the same time that aren't just work and your passion, it's so important. For example, I really prioritize my personal fitness and health. I've been weightlifting for quite some time now. It's one of my hobbies that I do every day actually with my sister. Just I don't know, having a good friend to go with or a sister to go with is also really good when it comes to doing extracurricular activities. So just keeping yourself grounded, having good peer support, and just doing things that you love and enjoy doing is what kind of helps you with that.
That's great. On another note, with some practical advice for students. So in the Water Walker, you do talk about your experiences that you had with being bullied and some of the challenges that you faced with that. What advice would you give to a student who's facing similar problems?
I think someone who may be facing similar problems, my advice would be just keep your head up and keep going, because people are always going to have negative things to say no matter where you go or what you do. And that's something that I found. You could be doing something that some people think is great and super inspirational, but others will have different opinions. But the only thing that should really matter is how you feel, and always remembering why you're doing what you're doing. that's what's really helped me like the most, because I can't lie, there was times where I really did feel like giving up, and it got really hard for me. And you know, I did have those times, and it really does break you down, but remembering why you're doing what you're doing and who you're doing it for example, I think back to the one memory I have of like the initial time when I first gained my inspiration to like speak up and use my voice. I was 8 years old, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned in the documentary, but I was attending a water ceremony, and all over the walls, it's not for consumption, boil water advisory, do not drink the water. But when I kind of like learned and like reflected on the fact that this community couldn't drink their water for over 20 years, I also thought about all those little kids I seen running around and like just, you know, innocently playing and having fun. And I had to think about the fact that some of these kids had no idea what it was like to drink water from their tap or do simple day-to-day things. And so, you know, remember like why I'm doing what I'm doing and who I'm doing it for. It's for those kids. It's for those like people that have been living like this for years and years and years. So yeah, I feel like that's something that I really like keep in mind. And also one more thing that I like to share with people is I didn't realize how like I was viewed for like younger audiences, like 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, but I only like in the last couple years came to this realization because I was speaking at a school, an elementary school, and the young kids were actually referring to me as like Moana. And they were getting like really excited about it and really like, you know, like, wow, like we're seeing Moana in real life. And so I was like, okay, so there's like children who literally look at me like a superhero, like a Disney princess, you know, I have to keep up that image, I have to keep up that reputation. You know, no Disney princess or superhero, you know, just like gets a little, like lets a little comment get to them. So just remember why I'm doing what I'm doing and who I'm doing it for is what helps me with that.
What a great message. That's amazing. I do see that we have a lot of audience questions, and I know that we're going to want to get to those. So I do have one kind of fun question that we spoke about a little bit earlier. Do you have any pets, and what do they mean to you? I know this is an important one.
Well, I actually have a Bengal cat, and his name is Mosca. I recently got him within the last year and a half, so he's still a baby. But he actually, a fun fact about him is that he actually only speaks our native language. He doesn't know English. So he only speaks Ojibwe. For example, he won't know what you mean if you say sit. You have to say mudabin, or you have to say mumpi instead of come here. Like, he doesn't understand you if you speak English. So that's one thing that's really cool about him. But the other thing is that he loves water. He will sit in the bath until I turn it on. Like, he loves to be in the water, which I think is so odd for cats, because I know a lot of cats really hate the water. So that's my pet, and that's a couple of things I really love about my pet.
Amazing, what a great story. Okay, so we do have some questions here that are gonna come up on the screen. Okay, so what struggles have you faced throughout your activism?
I think in terms of struggles that I faced was being so young and being Indigenous, because Indigenous people tend to have, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are aware of some stereotypes that surface around about Indigenous people, and you know, just being so young, you have like people look at you with a lens like you don't really know what you're talking about, or how could she, like, what is it she would have to say really actually matter because she's so young. I've actually had people say that to me, being very young in these spaces, or like just kind of disregarding what I'm saying, or you know, just not really paying attention or caring as much as, you know, some other people would. So I feel like just being disregarded because of my age, I find made it difficult at times to go through my activism. But you know, some people will look at like not a disadvantage, but some people will look at Indigenous people as a disadvantage and with like, you know, negative stereotypes towards them. But I look at that as kind of like my advantage. I think that because I'm Indigenous, I'm that much more powerful in these spaces. You know, Indigenous youth and Indigenous voices are so powerful, and not only just Indigenous youth, but like youth voices in general. Because like I mentioned, all the spaces that I've been, like. I feel like the most like valuable people in the room were the young people, because you generally wouldn't expect that. And I think it's just, you know, young minds think so good together. And I just think that like when young people work together, it's just that much more powerful and that much more impactful. That's why I talk a lot about like youth advocacy and youth empowerment, and especially young girls. You know, I also do speak a lot about like young Indigenous girls and young girls being in these spaces, because you know, women in these spaces isn't that heard of. And I think that, you know, empowering ourselves and, you know, just being in these spaces and putting ourselves there is our first step at like, you know, beating any like struggles that will come that way.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'd love to, yeah. I'd love to give a shout out. I know we mentioned before how many students we have, but maybe we could just get some cheers for all the young people in the crowd here. Yeah, lots of some of you today. Amazing. Is there a piece of water that you hold particularly dearly?
Yes, there is. I grew up on Manitoulin Island, which is also known as the largest freshwater island in the world, and we're surrounded by Lake Huron. And for me, Lake Huron is where I consider home. I feel most at home there. I feel very safe. I feel very connected. And those are the waters that I've prayed the most on and prayed the most for, because that's my home. And so, yeah, Lake Huron is like, I grew up on it. I would go swimming even if it was winter. You know, there was actually a couple times where I would do like winter dips with like even the ice still in there, just because it's just so nice. And even though it's freezing cold, it just feels really nice to be connected with like the water in such a, you know, such a way. And so, yeah, Lake Huron is what really stands out for me. I grew up on Lake Huron, so.
Okay, what was your most impactful or memorable speech?
That's a little hard to choose from, to be honest, because I feel I really like cherish all of the times that I've been given opportunities to speak on such large stages in front of such powerful people. But I think that my favorite speech would be probably my United Nations speech when I was, I think, 13, when I spoke at the United Nations. And for me, so I really like admire like my own progression through like my work, because I had really, really bad social anxiety as a kid. I still do, but I've just learned how to manage it. And I think that I used to actually cry. Like I was so nervous. Like I had like, you know, the motivation to do it, but it would just be so hard to get up there and do it sometimes. And I used to literally cry because I was so nervous. But like being able to like be only 13 and speak at the United Nations is probably like it was a really big accomplishment for me. Still is, because I just know like how like difficult it actually was for me to like go up there and speak, because it was so intimidating. But you know, the fact that I was able to push through that, and then, you know, the change that came out of it is what really makes me feel like proud of myself in that way, because it really goes to show you like how far a message will actually take you, even if it's just like a small effort. Like you never really know how far something will take you, because me, like 8-year-old, 9-year-old me would have never known I would have been able to speak somewhere like that. So like just the fact that I was able to speak there, and like I was just a little res kid a couple years before, like I think that's just like, it's just so like awesome for me to think back at, and like as the age I am now.
Do you have any advice that you'd give to 8 or 9-year-old Autumn?
I think that, you know, being yourself. You just being yourself, and like any idea that you have, like if it's like in terms of like advocacy, or like any idea that you have that you want to like, I don't know, just like a big idea. I say just do it. Don't even think about it, just do it, because like I just said, like you literally won't even, sometimes you don't even know how far something will actually take you. Because when I spoke up in front of just my school, I would have never known I would have been able to like speak in some of the spaces that I have. So like just speaking up in your school, writing letters to your local members of parliament. I've actually written letters to the Prime Minister and the Queen of England when she was still here with us. I wrote letters to all of them, and I actually received responses. And so I can confirm that they do indeed read them, and you can definitely write letters to them. And those are some of the things that I've done at such a young age to be able to use my voice, or just, you know, just like kind of like act on my ideas.
Amazing. Okay, this is a fun one. Do you have a favorite water word?
I would say my favorite water word would be water in Ojibwe. It means nebe. Well, it's nebe and it means water. And I think that like that's the most meaningful word to me because when I hear water, I of course think of water. But when I hear the word nebe, it's so different for me when I hear that, like it be used in that term rather than like the English term, because you know the Ojibwe language, I'm sure it's the same for like so many different languages, but when I think about that word specifically, it means so much more deeper, something so much more deeper to me. And like I actually think back to the memory of my grandfather when he explained to me what that word meant, and it's broken down into so many different pieces and the meaning of it. So like when I think about the word nibet, I think of my grandfather and like the deep complex meaning behind it, and I just like remember him breaking it down and like explaining to me what it meant and like what it meant for me. And so I almost get emotional thinking about that, but yeah, the word nibet would be my favorite water word.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. Do you think that the powers that be are beginning to understand the sacredness of the water?
I'm trying to understand that a little bit.
Yeah, so do you think that the people in power are listening to these messages?
I think that the message is definitely out there more than it was. When I started doing my work, you didn't see as much coverage, or as it's not that they weren't doing it, it's not that we weren't talking about it, it's just you didn't see it as much. You didn't see it being talked about in these spaces, or you didn't see it in the media. So I think progression in terms of the conversation of what's going on has definitely improved over time, but I feel like action-wise, there hasn't been a lot of improvement, because I can highlight when the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, a few years back, he had promised that all boil water advisories in Canada and First Nations communities were going to be resolved by March of 2022. And we still are going on a large amount of, First Nations boil water advisories. And so I think that we still have a long history, ongoing history of broken promises between government and Indigenous people, and it goes on for generations. And I think that although we're as people, as a society, we're talking about these issues a lot more, I still think that within government and political structures, there still is a lot of work to be done.
Okay, so we've spoken about this a little bit before, but what was one of the biggest struggles you faced as an activist, and what advice would you give to other youth activists like yourself?
Well, yeah, again, just doing it, and, if you have an idea, just acting on it and not thinking about it too much and trusting yourself and being your true authentic self is what I always like to promote, because everyone's gonna have their own idea and perception of what activism is to them. Like, my Auntie Josephine had a very big impact on me and helping me learn about the importance of water and how our people were treated by the government in terms of clean water issues. But everyone is going to have their own way of perceiving that and taking that and expressing their own ways of activism. So I think that it's going to be different for everyone, and I don't feel like there's a right way to do it. I don't think that there's a specific rules you need to follow. Everyone's gonna be different. Everyone's gonna do it differently. And so just doing it and just being yourself is what I always like to tell people because, one small thing, you never really know how far that's gonna take you or who you may inspire. Even if not everybody in this room is inspired, maybe that's one person or two people that you may have an impact on. So, no effort is too small. So I like to say that.
This is a really great question. What is something that we can do personally to help with water conservation?
I think that advocating within your spaces and creating the conversation within your spaces, whether that be your siblings, your family, your friends, workplaces, because I think that talking about it, yes, you know, we always talk about action, but like it is still very important to have the conversation, educate people properly. And I think that ensuring that you have proper education, or if you hear something that doesn't sound quite right, correcting it, yeah, just creating the conversation within your spaces, advocating with resources that you have, however you may define that, and yeah.
I can see we're getting like lots of thumbs up and likes, so that's resonating with a lot of people there. Okay, our next question is, what is your most important memory?
It's like one to think on a little bit. But my most important memory, I think, would be the ceremonies that I kind of like helped me understand that like that personal connection with like the water and like who I was as an Anishinaabekwe, because as I had like mentioned earlier, Anishinaabe people, we believe that we are automatically given the role and responsibility of being caretakers of the land and water. So I think that like where I learned what my meaning was to me and like what my role and responsibility was, I think that's what one of the memories that like really resonate with me. It's not really like one, it kind of like is a lot compiled together because, you know, there's not just one ceremony, there's ceremonies all the time. So yeah, I think that just growing up, being surrounded by ceremony and being fortunate to be surrounded by people like my grandfather, my Auntie Josephine, my mom, and just like my family, you know, just like learning what, you know, being a water protector or being an activist meant to me and like what I was going to do about it. Because, you know, again, everybody's going to have their own way of expressing what they're going to do. And yeah, so I think just like just growing up, being surrounded by my culture, my language, and my people is like my best memories.
Okay, how do we support youth to become activists just like you? What made a difference for you to be brave and act as a young person?
I think that one of the aspects that really empowered me was thinking about, well, it's actually when my Auntie Josephine started to get very ill, and her age started to, you know, impact her ability to be able to be in these spaces and advocate. And it really stood out to me because she started when she was a bit younger, and it was a realization because I realized how long she'd been talking about the same thing and how long she'd been advocating for the same thing. And it kind of put into perspective for me, like, who's going to do it when she's gone? You know, who's going to still talk about it? Like, of course there's people talking about it, but again, it's not really talked about as much in like mainstream like society or media. And so like I feared a little bit. I feared that it was going to be kind of lost, and that the importance would kind of die down. And so wanting to kind of like take on that like carry on that legacy of like advocacy for water is kind of what empowered me. And again, like always remembering who I was doing it for and why I was doing it is what also empowers me, because I visited some Northern First Nations communities, and one of them being Attawapiskat First Nation, that were also not able to drink their water for a very, very long time. And I had one-on-one conversations with the younger kids, and I think this girl was 7 years old, but she kind of was like, she was very emotional, and she was expressing to me how it made her feel that she had to like see her grandparents, her grandmother, and her grandfather carry very, very heavy buckets of water, and how it would make her feel when it spilled, and that she's seen that they had to go back and they had to keep refilling it. And so when I seen how that impacted our youth and how like emotional it made her, it made me sad that like our people, you know, in the country that we come from, we're treated so poorly. And, you know, why is it still this way? And of course we know about like Indian residential schools, we know about all the things that our people have gone throughout history. And, you know, they apologize, you know, they want to like say that things are different now, but really they're not. Our people are still facing the same like systemic impacts that were implemented many, many years ago, generations ago. So I think that I need to like remember what like my point is.
How can we support youth to become activists and speak about these issues?
Yeah, so like whether or not you're Indigenous or not, we all have things that we're passionate about, and we all have things that like, you know, we want to talk about and advocate for. And so just doing it, using your voice, our voices are so powerful, and so like you're so much more powerful than you realize, because, you know, I like to preface that I was just a res kid growing up. I was just a little kid, and I never thought that my voice would be able to make it as far as international stages, or who would have known I would have been able to speak to like a room full of people one day. So like, you know, just using your voice and like, you know, realizing your self-power is like what I would say. It's great.
This is a nice one. How does it feel like doing such big things for the world?
You know, sometimes it's a little overwhelming sometimes, but like I kind of mentioned, having the things that like, you know, keep you grounded, and like, you know, things aside from doing work, also help you feel a little less overwhelmed sometimes. But like, it definitely is a big responsibility, and it makes me feel like really like, it makes me feel really good when I see like people that I've impacted, especially young kids, and they talk about how passionate they are now, or how like, how can I help? What can I do? And it's like, you know, I like sometimes I don't realize how I'm looked at. Like, you know, people look at me as like a role model or mentor, and I think that's the best feeling, because I don't know, it's just like, I don't even know how to express it really. It's a really good feeling to be like, you know, able to be in these spaces and speak with so many like amazing people.
Okay, what did you find most challenging, and how did you overcome it? I know you spoke a little bit earlier about social anxiety and being scared. I wonder if you want to speak about that.
Well, it's definitely something I still deal with. I do get a little anxious sometimes, but you know, it's just a matter of like, I don't really know how I do it, to be honest, but I don't know. It's just, you know, I just have to like, I'll actually, let me point it out. I actually have two people here who help me with that. This is gonna help me answer this. I have two people who sit right here, my manager Jeff and my sister Sierra. Having these people in the audience, I sometimes look at them as like key points when I get really, really nervous. And so that kind of like reflects like the importance of peer support and familial support. That really helps me, and just, I don't know, just being confident. I just like to forget about the fact that I'm anxious sometimes, and I just gotta just be myself, just be confident, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that resonates with a lot of people here. Great job. Yeah, we get some shout outs. Great, okay. Okay, this is a really good one. So I know you spoke about it a little bit in the documentary, what it, doing a lot of this work, being a public figure means that your name's out there, your face is out there. What is challenging to deal with the media presence?
I think that media can definitely be really overwhelming at times, and how I deal with it really is like knowing that the media doesn't define who I am. The negative comments don't define who I am, and you know, whatever that may be, I like to focus on like kind of like what I'm intending to do, what my goal is, what my motivation is, and you know, just focusing on the good aspects of it, and you know, being able to, I look at it in a good way, because you're able to connect with so many people through social media. We live in a generation where social media is very prevalent, and it can be very useful in so many different ways in terms of getting your voice out there, making connections. And so I like to like try my best to look at it in the most positive way. But when it does get too, like, let's just say too negative, for example, I will put my phone down. I will literally sometimes even delete the app, the Instagram app, because I just can't. But definitely having like things, again, doing things that you enjoy aside from social media and aside from your work is what is really important. Like sometimes I'll get too stressed out and I'm like, Sierra, my sister, we have to go to the gym. We need to go for a walk. Like we need to do something aside from like being on our phones. And so, yeah.
So important. Great. Okay, this is a nice one. What's your favorite thing about what you do?
I think my favorite thing about what I do is like how I mentioned the young kids who I tend to have an impression on, and I think it's very empowering to know that like, you know, I'm looked at in like such a role model mentor way. I really appreciate that, and being able to inspire such young kids and be looked at in such a way is what's really empowering for me and what I love about what I do. And, just, changing, like, kind of shifting the way of thinking, because I don't feel like we really talked about like activism as much. I feel like it's really only prevalent in like the current generation, using your voice and speaking up and, advocating. I think that's kind of more prevalent now opposed to a few years ago. So I think that like there's definitely been a change in like what I've like the response from youth that I've seen over the years, and the generation that we come from now is so much more empowered and they use their voices so much more. And I think that like seeing that's not only like my impact. Like I know that's just like youth in general and like the work of so many other activists. And I think that just being able to be one of those activists that who are like empowering and inspirational is such an honor, alongside many other activists who are also very inspirational and amazing.
Okay, what is the most important thing kids can do to show their allyship with Indigenous communities that do not have access to clean water?
I think I made a key point earlier about being able to write to your local members of parliament and being able to write to the Prime Minister or people in power. I think that is a tool that we can definitely use a lot more, because if a lot of us are doing it, I always say that working together in numbers, we're that much more stronger. And so if like a lot of people are like sharing the same like point of view, I think that will definitely help make an impact. So I think that like advocating within your region, like for example, if there's a First Nations community close to your city, your town, wherever it may be, I think that advocating within your local areas through your local members of parliament would be a good like start. I know it sounds intimidating a little bit, but it's not really that intimidating, and you can just write a letter expressing your thoughts. It doesn't have to be a professional written letter. It could literally be anything, just expressing how you feel about what's going on in your community, what's going on in your area is a good way to start. And yeah, that's what I recommend. That's one of the things that I did as a young person.
That's great. Yeah, something everybody can take away and do right away. Okay, this is a good one. Future. Autumn will try and predict the future. Where do you see your career going, and what do you want to do in the future?
Well, I'm honestly still figuring that out. I'm currently in university, though. As mentioned, I'm a full-time student. I study criminology, actually. And that may be a little surprising, or like, why is she studying criminology? I get that sometimes. But it's actually because when I was young, I of course started to learn about the importance of clean drinking water and boil water advisories, and how and why my people were impacted by that. And it's very rooted in a lot of like racism, discrimination, and systemic factors. And so as I grew up in this, working within these like structures and within these systems, you start to learn, of course, that it's not just clean drinking water issues that affect Indigenous people. It's so much more. And I learned about the topic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, and my family does have a member of our family that was impacted by that crisis. And so it's an issue that really resonated with me, and the over incarceration of our people and the justice system. And so I started to learn about like those issues a lot, and missing and murdered Indigenous women was something where I really also wanted to help and learn a lot more about and be able to speak about with with the proper knowledge and skills to do so. And so I'm currently studying criminology, and I do hope to be able to advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous women and the way that our people are treated within the justice system.
So you've talked about this a little bit, but how did it feel to talk to the Prime Minister?
Honestly, when I spoke to the Prime Minister for the first time, I know there's an infamous picture of me, and I was very emotional. And it's actually because when I started to learn about pipelines and how pipelines impacted certain First Nations communities, where, for example, the pipeline will break and contaminate the land and water, I learned about the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which was going to be built and put in place in British Columbia. And at that age, I actually had signed a treaty. I was able to sign a treaty at an Assembly of First Nations meeting when I was like 12 years old, I think. 11 or 12 years old, very young. But so I kind of like learned about how it was going to impact our people. And the treaty specifically was to protect the grizzly bears from the Kinder Morgan pipeline and like the environmental impacts of that, because it would, of course, you know, destroy their home and their environment. And so that's kind of like what my prior knowledge to like speaking to the Prime Minister was at the time. And so I expressed to the Prime Minister that I was very unhappy with the choices he's made and broken promises to my people, because he had just accepted the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And so when I did that, I actually didn't know I was going to do that. I was actually told to not say anything to the Prime Minister, and I was told that you're just supposed to walk up to him, give him the gift, and come back down. And something about that and being told like what to do in like that way didn't sit right with me. And so I was like, so when I was walking up there, what's going through my head is, when am I ever going to be in front of the Prime Minister again? Like, I'm 12, I'm very like, when am I going to do this again? And so I took the opportunity to express my thoughts and feelings with him, and I told him that I was very unhappy with the choices he's made. And he said that he understood that and that he would protect the water. Because I got very emotional thinking about, you know, all the broken promises and like the things that I've learned about our people and our history. And so that's kind of what like the it was honestly a lot of emotions that came with that experience for me. And yeah, that's kind of what was going through my mind and what happened.
Brave at 12 years old. It's amazing. I think, yeah, we probably have time for one or two more questions here. So this is a really good one to end off on. What advice or words of wisdom would you give to the students here today who are thinking about the legacy that they leave behind and the impact of their actions?
I think I would say, think about what you want to leave behind when you go. When you're no longer on this earth, what are you going to leave behind? And that's something that I also think about when I'm doing my work, because, you know, I'm also carrying on a legacy of water advocacy from Auntie Josephine. That's something that she left behind. And of course, my work will also be something that I left behind. But I also like to, I have a favorite quote, actually, and it's, what you're not changing, you're choosing. And so if you're not, you know, putting in the action to change it, you're choosing to stay that way. You're choosing to keep it that way. And so if you're passionate about changing something, or even just saying something, or sharing an idea, just do it. Because if you're not changing it, you're choosing it. And so I think that's what I would like to say.
That's such a good note to end off on here. So thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so grateful that you have been able to come and share all of this wisdom with us. I will ask before we leave, is there anywhere that these students can follow along with your journey and what you're doing?
I am very active on my Instagram. That is unfortunately the only platform I'm really active on. It's just my name, autumn.pelche, and that's where you can keep up with what I'm doing, my advocacy, or, you know, help finding resources or places to learn from. You can go there, and that would be a great resource.
It's great. Thank you so much.
Big round of applause. Thank you, Autumn. We've been doing something where we've been taking pictures with the audience in the back. We've really liked that. Can we do the same thing? Amita, come in. Yeah, you could just stand right here with the audience in the back. And audience, you know the drill, showing your enthusiasm. Thank you again, Autumn. We appreciate that so much. Thank you, everyone. I want to say three last things. Thank you to the Grand Theater, our volunteers, all of our speakers. Let's give them a nice round of applause. Yes. Thank you to the City of Kingston for partnering with Sustainable Kingston. We obviously appreciate this city so much. I come back here every Monday. I'm here every Monday. I wouldn't even drive to Oshawa every Monday, and that's only an hour from Toronto. I drive all the way here, and it has a lot to do with what this city has to offer. Thank you again to all of our sponsors, including our event partner, Rotary Club of Kingston, Gananoque, sponsors Queen's University, St. Lawrence College, McDougall Insurance, Greenscale, and Toast and Jam. Finally, the bus is free. Just show the ticket that you have for this symposium to the bus driver. Thank you all. I'm Ali Hassan. I'll see you again next year. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.